This is the March 14th meeting of the Littleton Planning Commission. This is a regular meeting. We have two items of business for the public hearings, and we do have a quorum. We've got all our regular members present as well as our two alternates. And if we could have a roll call, please, Doreen.
Commissioner Bockenstead.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Coronado.
Here.
Curia.
Here.
Commissioner Newfinke. Here. Commissioner Metcalf.
Here.
Commissioner Radville. Here. Commissioner Samuelson.
Here.
Commissioner Stavropoulos.
Here. Thank you very much, and we do have a quorum. All right. Are there any changes to the agenda anyone would like to suggest? Seeing none, we have one set of minutes from January 10th in front of us. I believe everybody got a copy early on. And are there any changes to the minutes that we have, the draft of the minutes? Linda.
Just a comment. Jennifer Ranville, is Commissioner Ranville?
Yes, on the title page. You didn't get the title. All right, good point. I didn't even notice that. All right. Is there anything else? I think seeing no other corrections, they're approved as presented with that one. All right. And we've got, as I said, two items. The first on our agenda, and people are still signing in, it looks like. The first item is McDonald's Restaurant Plan Development Overlay, 5858 South Santa Fe Drive, and for us it is case number PSP 10-0003. And I tell you what, Ernie, if you will just wait just a moment, if these folks that are currently signing in are involved, we'll give them a minute to get settled. Even if they're involved in the second hearing, we'll give them a minute. And it'll give me a minute to get that folder out. Put a couple others away. I think our senior planner, Ernie Rose, is also going to get the public roster. This is a public hearing. There will be an opportunity for public comment. In general, what we do is have a presentation with the exhibits delineated from the city staff. There's an opportunity for questions from the commissioners. Then if the applicant has commentary, has a presentation, we'll have that. Again, more questions. And there will be a public hearing where people not associated with either side, in particular the staff or the applicant, can make comments, bring up things, and pose questions for the commissioners. So I think we look fairly well settled. The city attorney is with us, and Ernie, if you would.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm here to present the McDonald's Restaurant Plan Development Overlay. It's at 5858 South Santa Fe Drive, case number PSP 10-0003. I'd like to start by submitting a list of exhibits. The exhibits are as follows. Exhibit A, City Staff Report and Attachments. Exhibit B, Application and Attachments. Exhibit C, Area Reference Map. Exhibit D, City Zoning Ordinance by Reference. Exhibit E, City Sign Code by Reference. Exhibit F, Official Zoning Maps by Reference. Exhibit G, Proof of Posting. Exhibit H, proof of publication, and Exhibit I, public hearing roster. The applicant, EES, on behalf of the owner, is requesting approval of the plan development overlay to demolish the existing restaurant building located at 5858 South Santa Fe, and to demolish the restaurant and to construct a new building. The subject property is located within the Transit Impact Overlay Zone, therefore a PDO is required for the demolition of the existing structure, and the existing structure is not located within a historic district on the list of merit or designated as a historic landmark. The Transit Impact Overlay Zone is defined as the area located within 1/2 mile as the transit platform, which is at Alamo and Prince. The property is subject to the requirements of the Littleton Downtown Design Guidelines, and it is in sub-area 8, the southern neighborhood. The property is zoned CA, and the property to the north is also CA, and it is the gun shop. To the east is single-family residential. It is zoned CA. To the south is a gas station and a repair store, both zone CA. And across Santa Fe is the Echo Star, which is CAPDO. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing 4,230 square foot restaurant and outdoor play place to allow for construction of a new 3,900 square foot restaurant. The new restaurant includes architectural features and interior improvements that include Wi-Fi and flat screen televisions. The proposed building is oriented towards Santa Fe, and the traffic circulation will stay as it is. The building's being built within the existing footprint of the building that's there currently. The access points from South Santa Fe and South Rap will not change, and the flow for the drive-through restaurant will not change either. The proposed application was forwarded to several different referral agencies in the city and outside of the city. All the issues that are listed either have been addressed or will be addressed during the final site development review plan at DRC, and that is if the PDO is approved by the Planning Commission. The City Code requires the Planning Commission to review the application per Section 10.9.5 of the zoning ordinance, and again, the property is subject to review under the review of Littleton Downtown Design Guidelines. The application was reviewed by Dick Farley from Urban Design LLC, and DRC found that the overall proposal complies with the general design standards and guidelines for sub-area 8. Under the conflicts and complications, the city sign code requires that as a part of the PDO, you have to submit a sign package. The number of signs permitted on a property is determined by street frontage. The sign code only allows you to count one frontage, and if you have two frontages that are contiguous, you can count those. In this case, there are dual frontages, but they are not contiguous, South Rap and South Santa Fe Drive. The amount of signage that would be allowed on the property, counting one frontage, would be 133 square feet. It would be 3 signs and 133 square feet. The applicant is requesting 6 signs for a total of 299.12 square feet. There is history of other properties being allowed to count dual frontages. It is sign variances are different than other variances in that you don't have to prove a hardship. There has to be a unique situation, like dual frontages or a flyover ramp in the way. It has to be in general harmony with other businesses in the area. And the final one is it has to be the minimum needed on the property. Applying this variance, or if So the Board of Adjustment has approved several of these, and there, in my time here, there has not been a variance denied that had 2 frontages, and that's been the last 10 years. So every one that I brought forward received a variance. So if they were allowed to use the 2 frontages, they would be allowed to have 4 signs for 256.85 square feet. With the exception of the signage, staff finds the proposed PDO for McDonald's at 5858 South Santa Fe Drive meets the objectives and standards of the Littleton Downtown Design Standards and Guidelines for Sub-Area 8 and the requirements of Section 1095 of the Littleton Zoning Code, more specifically the requirements concerning the development within the TIZ and their criteria as listed in the staff report. Staff recommends the PDO be approved with the condition that the PDO be revised to reduce the allowable amount of signage to no more than 4 signs and 256.85 square feet. With that, I'll take any questions you may have.
All right. Julio, first in.
Based on the request, I'm trying to get clarification on what you just said about 4 signs equaling 256.85 square feet of. Do you have any idea what they would look like, since you're modifying, I assume, the proposal that came in?
They would just lose 2 signs. If they're proposing 2 signs above that, and 2 signs would be removed, and I believe the 2 signs that are be questioned would be the 2 M's, or 2 of the M's. I believe there's 3. You'd get rid of 2 of those.
That's only, okay. I guess I'm a little bit, I hate to be difficult, but I want to bring this up. I found it very interesting that, one, that you said the amount of allowable signage per site, per sign code is 3 signs at 133. And then you go down beyond to the last paragraph of page 4, it says the staff does not support the applicant's request, but recommends that the above described modification be allowed since precedent supports the use of both sign frontages. I guess the question that I have is, to the best of my knowledge, we always look at items on a case-by-case basis, and every time that you see a new one, you can't go back to a bunch of others that are around just because of the fact that they were done one way. I mean, for all I know, they could be done inappropriately. So I don't look at it as being, and I don't have any jurisdiction on any of the other 4. I do have jurisdiction over this one. So I guess I'm kind of curious about what I thought to be some differentiation in thought.
Right.
And that's, that's where I'm coming from. Well,
the bottom line on the bottom, we support the 4 signs, like you said, because of the other variances we've had. It is a unique circumstance to have 2 frontages. There's not a lot of properties in Littleton that have that, especially 2 on 2 somewhat major streets. In this case, the Lincoln, or excuse me, not Lincoln, that's one of the other ones. The Rapp Street does have, you can see it from the college, and that's where they get a lot of their business. So that was part of their interest of having signage on that back side.
the other thing that drives me a little bit is if you weren't interested in the applicant's request, why did you not have the applicant go through the Board of Adjustment to see what they were going to say?
Well,
I mean, that would have been another remedy I would have thought that could have been handled before we saw this.
that is true. We had not contemplated taking it to the Board of Adjustment. As we worked through it and realized that it came down to the 2 signs, and actually part of the PDO plan allows flexibility. You are allowed to propose your signage in there, so rather than sending them through a variance, we thought that through the PDO, the flexibility could be granted there instead of 2 cases, just have them do 1.
Yeah,
I appreciate your comments.
and let me just clear something up. When we, because we're going through the PDO process and signage can be part of that process, I would just say, I guess partially agreeing with your thoughts about precedents, you know, the ones that we have talked about before have gone through the Board of Adjustments based on their criteria. You all can't really consider that criteria when you make your decision tonight. You're just considering the PDO criteria.
Correct.
So you would just look at that request under what criteria you have and not under the hardship or whatever was described.
The other question, well, you're bringing up another question for me. I hate to belabor this, but are the other 4 properties listed, were they 2 PDOs? And if so, how did they get to the Board of Adjustment?
I don't think their signs were under the PDO. They're not.
They were not.
Board of Adjustment.
They just were, it was just the Board of Adjustment. They applied for a variance.
Got it.
Yeah.
Just that they were similar circumstances in terms of having the 2 street frontages that actually made sense to staff.
I
at least
understand
into
that
the
part.
board,
It's all the
yeah.
rest of it I'm
Through
having
these-
troubles
sure.
with.
But yeah, if you look at the locations, you know, Arby's on Broadway, Pizza Hut on Broadway, you know, they're not in the PDO
Right.
area.
They're in
So that's why I was harping on the PDO.
We go to Linda next, and then Paulus.
Ernie, the existing signs that direct you to the DVD rentals on both sides, on Rapp and on Santa Fe, are those considered signs?
Yeah, as it sits right now, there are 3 signs, and those are 2 of them. 3 signs that are counted. If the sign has a logo on it, it is counted. If that sign just said enter and
Welcome.
welcome, then it would not be. But since it has the arches on it, those are signs. So it's that sign, and then I believe there's one, the big one on the front. Those are their 3 signs as it sits.
And what about those that are painted in the window?
We do not count window signage.
Did that cover it, Paulus? To Paulus then.
So, yeah, and Suzanne, thanks for the clarification, because initially it felt like we're asking to approve a variance without having a variance application in front of us. And you're correct, Ernie, that PDO does allow for some flexibility. My understanding is that there's some give and take. Part of the flexibility is that of the PDO is that if the applicant asks for something that is beyond what the code permits, there's usually the expectation that they're giving something somewhere else. Are they giving something somewhere else?
Well, in the architecture, the building is brick. I do have a photo of that. I don't know if they're specifically giving anything. The criteria states that it has to be complement the architecture, and as you can see there, the signs do work well with the building. But as far as giving something specific, I don't. That was never specifically stated.
In regards to the sign, that's the question. I have some questions for the applicant, but I'll reserve them for when we go later.
Let's everybody get their questions in for Ernie. Let me go to Steve next, and then Dave. Steve.
Okay. I had the same question on the window sign also, so thank you for answering that one. I also wonder on the big sign up along the street.
Santa Fe.
Yeah, the one with the big arches and the brick and the electronic sign in it. What is all measured as square footage on that sign?
None of the structure holding it up is measured, or any of the backing. So just the letters or that board. So the M is measured, the word McDonald's is measured, not the backing, and then the reader board.
Okay. What about the air in between the arches?
We don't measure that.
So it's not like a block of the space it would take?
We're pretty flexible with that. We allow them to not count the air. You'd almost stand that M up and make a square around it, and then the other part, you know how it forms like that? The 2 pieces, does that make any sense? So if you have that M, I mean, it's hard to measure that,
You have a
that
picture
structure.
that you can, otherwise I got mine right here.
Probably easier to get. So you have the M here. And if you were to take this piece of the end and stand it up and just put a square around that piece, I mean, you wouldn't have to do that. If you could measure it that way, you can measure it that way. I'm just trying to explain it to you that the air here is not counted. Only the sign piece is counted.
And you do something similar for the McDonald's too, don't you, Ernie, in terms of...
Right, and it just, you just go around the McDonald's piece, and then the whole reader board is counted.
So the red part isn't counted either?
No, the background is not.
Okay.
Nor is the base. So.
Nor is the base. The base is not counted. That's a support structure.
Does that go for the same for the M that's going on the side of the building?
Yeah, it would be the same. And I'm not quite sure how they, it was reviewed by the zoning official, the numbers, but they're allowed to do that. It's just the amount of the surface area, if you will. It's not the air in between.
Okay.
Or the backing.
Dave?
Actually, I've got a few questions that I had submitted earlier to staff so that they could be prepared, but I need to read them to get them on public record.
Sure. Can we defer that for just a second? I think Julio has a little more on signs. Was that about signs? Can we go? Thanks. Sorry. We'll go right back to you.
The only thing I'd like to comment on is or ask the question of is there a height limitation on the sign, be it either on Santa Fe or on Rapp Street?
There is a height limit of 25 feet for signs, so this property is in the Santa Fe corridor. That's part of the plan. However, if you don't take the sign down, the existing sign is staying. They're just building all this up underneath it, but they're not actually taking it down. If they were taking it down, we would have made them bring it down, but since they're not, they don't have to do that. And that's pretty consistent what we've done all along Santa Fe.
Does that include, is the new part the M as well?
No, that's not new. It's the sign.
Always been.
And the applicant can ask that, but I'm almost positive that it's.
Okay, that's all I wanted.
It's just building up the base and putting in the reader board.
And what's the height on Rapp Street?
It's still the same.
25 feet?
Yeah. We take them to DRC, and they usually don't get to be that high, and we haven't had.
I was just going to say,
right.
it's very generous.
Right. That's what the sign code says.
All right. Thank you. David?
Before I get into the questions that I had submitted earlier, I want to follow up on something Steve asked, and Ernie, your response. You said that on the sign on the street, the written text McDonald's counts, the red background doesn't.
Right.
4-3-3-1 says, item A, signs with backing. The area of all signs with backing or a background material or otherwise that is part of the overall sign display shall be measured by determining the sum of the areas of each square, et cetera, that creates a small single continuous perimeter enclosing the extreme limits of the display surface or face of the sign. So how does only the text count in that case?
Well, it's the way we've interpreted it. It's been that way since I've been here, and I took it to the zoning official today, and that's the way she does her measurements.
I think, or correct me if I'm wrong, Ernie, but I think it's partially just in response to the complexity of some signs. Some of them are almost impossible to measure otherwise in terms of how they're designed and constructed. So this one actually kind of allows you to kind of focus in on the small areas. It does allow, for the larger red background and in other cases other backgrounds as well. So it's more controlled by the height and kind of the overall scale.
In this particular case, it would seem a lot easier to calculate the height of the red box, literally applying the zoning ordinance, than to try and derive the outline of the word McDonald's. So I don't understand.
Usually
Precedent or not, it doesn't seem to comply with the zoning ordinance, signage code.
Well, it's the way that I was taught and the way that we've done it since I've been here, so that's the way we've measured it.
Yeah, I think some jurisdictions probably have a more restrictive definition and measurement. We're kind of unique in a lot of things, but that's every sign in town had gone through that process. So it's kind of the way it has been structured and how we're consistent. So.
Okay, then I guess one of the problems I had in trying to come up with the total face areas of the proposed signs was the applicant conveniently included graphics indicating the dimensions and areas, net areas of the signs. I have to tell you, I can't figure out how either you came up with your numbers or they came up with theirs. Can you walk us through that sign by sign and tell us where the numbers came from?
That information was submitted to the zoning person who made the call on the measurements. I'll let the applicant explain how they arrived at their square footage.
As long as we can get somebody to walk us through it, that's fine.
Right.
Okay. A lot of these others don't have to do with signs, but I'm just going to go through it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Although this one does, and it's probably an interesting follow-up. I know it has nothing to do with this applicant, but just for comparison's sake, do you have any idea what the calculated area of the sign for the Platte River Bar and Grill is just down the street?
I looked for that after I got your application, and I could not, or your request, I could not find it. I do not know what it was or what it is.
The only other comment I'd make on signage, I'll wait. That can be in the discussion section. It's not really a question.
Okay.
Let me go to some of these others. In the review comments, Denver Water included a caution that the service length and configuration of the proposed fire line, quote, will result in substantial head loss, unquote, but they stopped short of concluding whether that's a problem or not.
Right.
Do we have any information on that, or are we just supposed to speculate?
Well, that issue will be addressed during the final site development plan.
Okay.
The applicant will have to address that, and that will be determined as a part of that. They won't be able to do the work if they can't figure that out.
Okay. But an issue that will be
Right.
detailed
That'll be
and
addressed.
resolved in the future. Okay. That was it. The rest of it really has to do with the whole reference to previous variances, why that even came up, if we're not considering this as a variance, that sort of thing. But I'll take that up during the discussion.
We'll handle that during discussion. I would, I guess I would note regarding the water pressure head loss in the fire line, under Littleton Fire Rescue Review, it says building construction and fire protection system plans must be submitted for review and permit prior to construction, which is where perhaps they will take that comment from Denver Water and determine exactly what's necessary to provide them adequate water pressures flow. All right. Do we have any other questions then for Ernie at this point? I think that's it for, oh, I'm sorry, Jenny.
I had one on the electronic message board. Is there any restrictions in the city government district on electronic message boards?
In the guidelines, I'll have to, I believe there's not.
I didn't see it specifically listed, but I just did.
And
I
though-
did see something about illuminated, different signage.
Right.
There's some
I don't
items
think they're specifically
Okay.
not allowed. Right.
I think there's some language about flashing or some things like that. It sort of depends on.
It's controlled by the sign code. You can't, how many times it flat or changes. That's all regulated in the sign code for a
Right,
board sign.
depending on the programming of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yes.
on that, is that are there any CDOT regulations since Santa Fe is a U.S. highway?
Yeah.
So are there any federal or state regulations concerning signs?
I don't have an answer for that. I know we have, the college has a reader board, the liquor store has a reader board, Hudson Gardens has a reader board sign, so I don't, and EchoStar had one that's not functioning right now.
I would assume not, because the Merchandise Mart has one that's really annoying, that's always flashing.
Anecdotal evidence. All right, then. If there's a presentation from the applicant, I think some of us have questions, so maybe if there's not a formal presentation, one of the representatives can come forward. And for the purpose of the public record, introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Hello, my name is Mark House. I'm with McDonald's. I'm the area construction manager for them. I have here behind me Mike. He's our civil engineer. So
Okay.
he may be able to help with some more technical questions you guys raised tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Paulos, did you have a question?
Did you want to do a presentation?
Well, I think staff did a good job, and we worked with them. I think they presented it well. I just wanted to touch on a few items you guys mentioned. Maybe I can maybe answer some of those questions I think you guys may still have for those. I guess first with the message board. So we're not trying to make Las Vegas, like to your point, with flashing. So these message boards are programmable. So the goal is to send a nice message but not make it flash. I think the code I did read had some specifics on the timing on how long the message was displayed. So we will, if you guys grant us this, these signs, we'll make sure that those are programmed properly. And the franchisee has the ability to do that from in the restaurant and change those messages. As far as water quality, water pressure goes, so for those of you that aren't in the building end of the technical process of it, we'll make sure that the hydrants are in close enough proximity to entrance so the fire department can service the building if there were a fire. We'll make sure that proper fire protection measures were in place in the building itself. On top of that, with the new codes, and our Mike will make sure he does all those calculations on water flow and pressure, and it'll take into account also, the demands the building's going to place on the water lines. So we'll take care of those in the construction process if we move forward. So there's some questions on signs, on what the applicant was going to give up in exchange for what you guys are, if you were to grant our variance on the signs in the building and let us proceed. So what we're proposing is a multi-million-dollar investment in a time that not a lot of people are reinvesting. We think Littleton's a place for us to be long-term for another 25 or 30 years, and we want to remain there. So we're proposing investing a lot of money in the community. We're going to bring new jobs with this new location. We expect an increase in sales volume. We think the location will be more current, more relevant. When you see this new building, people have a tendency to stop there on this corridor versus keep traveling through the city to another location. So there'll be some tax dollar benefits for yourselves as well as for us to capture some business we're not capturing today. So it's going to benefit us, a win-win situation. You have one of our highest specs of building. We work with the DRC, work with staff, so we're adding a solid brick building. That's not typical for us. That's a very expensive building for us to build. And you got to sell a lot of hamburgers to make up for, another $40,000, $50,000 of bricks on a building. On our road sign, instead of just leaving the existing sign, we're proposing an entire new base around it, a brick base to match the surrounding architecture, to match the building itself, something a lot more higher quality than what you see today, and something that's in line with what the intent we believe is of what the city's trying to do in that corridor along Santa Fe and clean that up. So it'll be a brick base, if you notice there. Also on the signs, you wanted someone to walk you through some of those, so I can walk you through a few of those details. But we basically, if you turn to this page here, I believe it's in your package, and we call out on the right-hand side the details of how we're calculating the square footage. So you see on the right, it says box square footage of arch, 57.77 square feet, which literally means we just drew a square around the McDonald's M logo. And then on the bottom, we also give those details. So we can give you some of them have the actual and the gross square footage on them. But to your point on where there's a red background, we did not draw a line around there because actually on the sign we're leaving the existing sign. But I guess the key with signage is I've been to thousands of cities, and I think everyone looks at sign codes a little bit different, although there's some similarities. I think that what it boils down to is we aren't 100% in compliance, and that's why we're in front of you today. We're making a substantial investment in the community. We're investing a lot of money, and we need to make sure that, one, the store is visible and easy to get to by patrons. I think there's some unique circumstances with this location versus others. We front on two streets. You have the college. You have some buildings that were built after us, next to us, that have blocked visibility to us, some things that are outside of our control that really we're kind of stuck with the constraints we have on our lot. I think you guys were appropriate in saying everything's unique, because every lot's unique, every site circulation is unique, everything's unique. So we're asking for those signs, as you can see, to get good visibility for all the people around. Did you have any specific questions on the individual signs? Or is that
Dave, did you want to work through it further? Or Steve? Steve, I think. Did you have something?
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
let me go to Steve.
Okay, back to the one with the picture of the street sign on it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I understood the way Ernie was describing on how the measurement is done. Or do you agree with what how Ernie was saying the measurement is done by your calculations?
So what you have here is we basically drew a box around the M, if you can picture the M inside a box, and we drew a box around the letters McDonald's. And that's how we calculated the square footage. That's typically, in all the cities we go to, the most typical way of calculating sign square footage.
Okay, so if you're drawing a box around the M, that you would be counting the air in between the arches?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And doing that way, you came up with 57.77?
Yep.
And then the red was the 9.47? Correct?
So that would include a box around around the McDonald's, and it would include the air behind that, but not the surrounding larger red area.
Okay.
But like, for example, the red behind the D, the red in the center of the O, the red in between the letters, all that would be included.
Okay, and then what about the electronic sign? I'm not seeing...
And that one would be a box just around that one.
Do you know what the square footage of that part of the sign would be?
You know, I don't. We submitted all those square footage that are highlighted there, but that's how we came up with the square footage. And we did that for every single sign. We used that same calculation to come up with the total square footage that's represented, I believe, in your package.
Okay. Then when you got to the signs on the building, you were calculating basically the brick in between the yellow?
Yes. It'd be the same square around the M and the same rectangle around the word McDonald's.
Okay.
So that increases the square footage. Obviously, when you look at the Arch logo, there's a lot of air and open space behind it, but it's our logo, so we got to calculate it that way.
Okay.
And just to be clear, the M and the red box with the McDonald's are the existing portion that are there.
Correct. That's the existing sign head. We're adding that base to it below.
And so what's added is the brick pedestal, if you will, and the message center in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And a new supporting structure, so it'll be safe there.
sure. Okay. Anything else for the applicant on signs?
I had a question. You've seen staff's recommendation of reducing that to 4 signs. Do you see any major issues with that? Have you put a pencil to that and see if that will fit into what you're trying to do and still get your signage requirements?
You know, we took another look at it after staff made the recommendation, and what we'd really like to have, we had the 6, but we had another meeting on that actually just today, and we'd love it if we could stick with the actually 5 signs to identify the building from the different angles, which would be the eliminating of one of the channel letters which say McDonald's, which would be on the drive-through side of the building, or the north side of the building, between us and the motel.
Which it's difficult to see until you get past the motel anyway.
Yeah.
Could you would find a sign on this diagram, correct? If you could place that on the document reader so that both we and see, and then after it zooms in, will you tell us which one you're saying that you would be? Okay.
So we would love it if you guys would give us an approval with 5 signs with elimination of this sign here.
Do you have the total square footage of what those 5 signs would be that you're requesting?
I don't think I have the actual calculation of that one sign we'd be eliminating in here.
Because if you're effectively asking us to introduce an amendment on your behalf to the PDO, and since the way that is written is not just the number of signs, but the total square footage, if you want one of us to do that, it would be helpful to provide us with that number.
So it's 39.78 square feet would be the square footage of that one McDonald's sign. So it would be a reduction of the square footage calculation you have there by one quantity of one sign, and then the that square footage.
3978.
That's located on the very last page of your handout. All right. How do I use this little pointer thing here? Do I have it upside down? All right. We're making progress now. What about we need the top part, though? So it would be this sign here along the drive-through side that we'd propose eliminating. And this square footage, which is highlighted here, is the calculation.
If we're subtracting correctly, it would be 259.34 square feet.
Can you say that number again?
259.34. Taking the 299.12 they requested minus the 39.87.
So effectively, in terms of total square footage, they're only about 2.5 square feet more than what staff is recommending, but that's with 5 signs instead of 4.
Right.
All right. Anything else on signs while we're discussing signs? I had a question that may be more specific to the civil engineers, like they're still ruminating. Let's see, one of the additions to the site is regarding stormwater drainage and the retention of that. It's on the north side, closer to Rapp Street. And it looks to me like there's a sanitary sewer that runs along underneath a portion of that. We can see it, but it's not getting onto the screen, so there you go. We have a monitor down here in case you guys don't realize it. So we don't turn around and look. We're watching what is on the document reader in the monitor down below. So, yeah, right.
Yeah. Can you turn it
Is it upside down for them?
Yes. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
And
Great.
then that rectangular, irregular shape at the top, that's for stormwater retention. It looks to me like it has a sanitary sewer that runs underneath it. We don't have, I think, all the elevations. And directly over the top of that, perhaps it says 24-inch PVC. Is that the sewer line? Is that, that's, I guess I'm wondering, when you plant deciduous trees over the top of that, and then you've got the potential for them to perhaps compromise that, depending on the depth, ground movement and things like that, then you have, if it is compromised, broken in any way, you've got sewage that leaks into a stormwater retention area, which then eventually makes its way into the plat. It would not be surprising, other than perhaps odor, for people to say, oh gosh, there's a bunch of water in there, which turns out to be sludge. So if you could talk a little bit about the relative depth of that and the configuration of that retention area, what the lowest elevation perhaps is there compared to the depth of that pipe, maybe you know.
Mike Serbo with EES. I would say the situation described would be pretty awful. if that were to happen. I do know that the landscaping is designed within Littleton's code to remove deep rooted trees from utilities in that area. The lowest elevation in the pond, don't have my construction plans in front of you, I believe it was at 37 elevation. I know that the sanitary sewer line, although I don't have elevations off the top of my head, is the deepest utility in that area. Okay. So as far as roots getting in there, we don't anticipate that being a problem, which is why it wasn't addressed to have any modifications to that existing pipe. Over in this area where proposed utilities are going to be constructed, anywhere where there's a crossing not within the minimum cover requirements, it will be encased in concrete, and anywhere there will be anticipation of crossing or conflicts with utilities as we go through the review process by city engineering, that would be addressed either by encasing it in concrete or moving our proposed utilities or proposed modifications away from that line.
Okay. Do you have any idea how deep that is? Deepest utility is?
Well, at the top of my head, I believe it was around 8 feet.
8 feet, okay.
But I would have to get back with our survey.
Okay. The landscape says deciduous tree. I think there's 3 in that area that look pretty good sized, and I guess that would be, I don't know. Craig, do you have an opinion about that? He's our landscape architect.
Yeah, I was going to comment that it looked like they're right on top of the sanitary sewer line, so
yeah,
probably shouldn't be.
It seems like maybe in the final review that should be addressed as.
So if you like, we'd be happy to remove those trees and we can replace them and put other trees maybe at other locations on the lot that aren't in line with that utilities, if you like. Something happy to do that for you.
Maybe something to be noted for the DRC to talk about. 8 feet is nothing to a good-sized deciduous tree. Sure. And I suppose the prospect, even if, well, we've got some variables, encasing part of it in concrete and so on. If you've got, was there a height on the schedule for the trees? I don't remember. You have a windstorm, particularly because this is disturbed soil, and knocks one of the trees over, you could easily tear that sewer line up and have a real mess. It's something to consider.
We appreciate that. If you put that in your comments and if you give us approval, we'll be happy to remove those and put them on other locations.
Maybe better, yeah.
Just to follow up on that, it looks like they're proposed trees, so you wouldn't be removing existing trees. The proposed trees on top of the sanitary sewer, they just have to be relocated, I think. Mm-hmm.
Is he correct? Those are trees that are proposed to be planted, not existing?
Based on the landscaping plan, there's proposed trees here, which are not deep-rooted trees.
Okay.
And we could move those over. There's also some larger trees, which looking at the survey, they may not be on the McDonald's property that are sitting over here. That may or may not affect it. But we can, if it's these 3 you're talking about, we can definitely locate those someplace else on the lot.
I think that would make sense. Craig's nodding. He seems to agree. I think as a landscape architect, they'd probably prosper if they got into the sewer line.
Just a general comment, the squirrels love that area back there.
Well, do they get free French fries? All right.
My 9-year-old boy loves those trees too, Gets in there and climbs on them.
I have another question dealing with the stormwater. Is there anything in the retention area that's going to create any kind of filtration for water quality?
Just the soil in itself.
Can you describe to me what you're going to put down? Is it going to be, is there going to be a liner to this and then dirt above it, or is it just going to be just impervious surfaces, or pervious surfaces?
Just a pervious surface of native seed and planting, which is very absorptive. I do know that over time, these ponds are maintained. That's something we address with engineering, having a vehicle in the area. We anticipate that parking space just adjacent to the pond or right next to it where they can access it and clean it out if need be. Sediment does have the tendency over time to accumulate in that.
There is a line for storm drainage out of that as well, is there not? I thought I saw one.
Yes, sis.
And do you know if that goes into a larger system within the city, or where does it go?
It goes into an existing storm sewer here that is part of the City of Littleton's stormwater system.
And then from there it goes to Cherry Creek.
South Platte.
Huh?
South Platte.
South Platte, whatever.
South Platte Drainage Basin, correct?
All right.
You know, not only are we, you know, just to note, not only are we providing the detention for this site, we are increasing the amount of landscaping on site dramatically from where it is, so that'll decrease the amount of, ultimately, decrease the amount of water that will be discharged from the site.
Looks like maybe Ernie has a comment about something.
We do have comments from the landscape architect about those trees.
Good.
And he says that the direct detention area seems to be the best snow storage area. Move the 2 shade trees on the east and west ends of the pond so the snow can be pushed in, and this area is to be, well, hold on a second. The sewer area, easement on the north side of the property as a no tree planting area, and move the 2 proposed trees in or on the edge of this area. So he had addressed moving those.
Yeah. And as they get into the full site plan review, they'll do a lot more detailed review as well.
Yeah, when they resubmit, they'll have to address all of these issues here, and that was one of the issues on here.
All right, very good.
Ernie, can we incorporate that letter, since you made reference to it, as an additional exhibit? Is that, I mean, Mr. Chair, that'd be appropriate? I'm just saying, since that was specifically referenced, and it is an official letter, that we add it as an exhibit.
Exhibit J is the architect's or landscape architect's memo.
Thank you.
Right, very good. Yeah, our note about the city landscape architect wasn't specific about that part, so very good. All right.
I have a question specifically, since we're on the subject of the parking surfaces, are those going to be redone, or are those going to remain the existing? It's a little unclear to me how much of the site you're demolishing and repaving.
We'll scrape the site down to bare dirt and completely rebuild the entire site, including all of our connections to all the utilities.
Okay. For the areas that you're going to repave for the parking, have you considered, are you planning to use any permeable concrete or permeable surfaces as an additional means of filtration?
No, not on the asphalt itself. We haven't considered that. We did the addition of all these areas to meet those requirements. Versus today, we don't have any water quality or detention on site. So it's 1,000% improvement of what we have today.
Okay. I have some other questions, but that's my last question. If other people have other detention, maybe we can stay on the same subject.
All right, Steve, then.
Okay, I'm back to the signs.
Oh,
I'm pretty much lost on what you're doing with the signs here. The McDonald's sign on the front of the building and what you have on the drive-through side, they're both, square them off at 40, right? Are they both the same size? Yes, the McDonald's lettering. So they're both 40?
39 point, whatever it was, yeah.
I'm just trying to make it simple with it. And then the M's on the front of the building and the side of the building are both 14?
Correct.
Okay. And then we get to the sign up along the street where you've got going by the boxed dimensions you got there, 57, 77. Okay, and then the McDonald's, not counting the red background, comes at 947.
Yep.
Okay. And then the electronic sign down there that portion of it is 2 feet 9 inches by 7 feet 10 inches? That's your dimensions that are measured.
Yep. 7'10" by 2'9".
Okay. Is there any more signs that I'm missing besides that I just listed?
So do you have a total of 6 there, besides the...
The 4 on the building and then the 3 signages that make up the front sign.
So the 5, correct? That's correct.
Okay, and I'm sorry, and then we had another one in the back of the building that was another 14.
So the four building signs, which would be the WA, which on the exhibit.
There's 3 WAs?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And with adding those up, you came up with 299.12?
Did you double check the math? I didn't physically do the math. Did you double check the math?
We did, but the electronic reader sign was omitted.
If you could speak closer to the mic so that for recording purposes, thank you.
We did calculate all the signs as you stated, except the electronic reader sign was omitted.
Okay, the electronic reader sign wasn't even listed there?
It was not,
And you came up with 299?
without the electronic reader.
Okay. Because 190. I've come up with about 214
Right.
with all the signs as you've listed.
The bottom line with the signage is that actually they could shrink any of these letters or down. So really it's trying to get approval for 5 signs in the square footage, and then they can spread it out within that amount of signage. So they're asking for the ability to have 5 signs for 200 and, what would you guys come up, 59 square feet, and then they could spread it out how they would. And the monument sign is 1 sign. We don't count it as 3 separate signs. It's 1 sign, and then the rest around the building. So really they're omitting the 1 sign, and they can make that configuration, it really is being within the square footage and the number of signs. How they disperse it, we will finish that during the site plan.
So these dimensions of the signs that we're looking at and talking about are pretty irrelevant because...
Well, they're showing their idea of it, but they could adjust them to make it work. They're not irrelevant. This is how, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that what they're asking for is 5 signs and that square footage. Now, how they arrive at that, I don't know if you can make the sign smaller or anything like that, but so I guess it's just an important note that you know that they're trying to go for the extra sign and the extra square footage.
Okay, because with the dimensions that they're going, they can go up to almost 30-some% larger signs and still make their
Well, did you count?
299.
I don't know how you came to your monument sign calculations. That it's the.
I went by the numbers that they're listing right here.
Okay.
They're double-sided, Steve.
Yeah. Did you count both sides?
On both sides?
Oh, so
Okay.
it counts as 1 sign, but you have to count the square footage on
Right.
both sides.
On both sides, okay.
That's where the difference is. It's counting both sides of that monument sign.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
And I will remind the commissioners, the last line regarding signs, the staff says, in addition, staff recommendation is more in keeping with the requirements of the Littleton Downtown Design Guidelines, Sub-Area 8, which recommends the use of fewer signs. So that's the tie-in, I think, not really the precedent of all those other cases, but examples of how those design guidelines relate to this area and these signs on this property. They're recommendation was 256 square feet, and I believe with 5 signs, we're looking at 259 square feet, perhaps, if that's an amendment that's proposed and successfully added to this. All right. Anything else for the applicant?
Just one more note.
Craig, I'm sorry.
A few questions on the site plan. I read in the brief that the building is within the footprint of the existing building, but it looks like the existing conditions, there's not a separate existing conditions plan here, so it's hard to tell exactly what's existing and proposed, but it appears that the new footprint is not exactly within the proposed or the existing footprint, but it appears that the setbacks, it's within the setbacks of the existing building from the north and from the west.
So it's generally in the same position, although we've moved the building closer towards Santa Fe to keep in compliance with the goal there is to put the buildings more pedestrian friendly up by the building, up by the street. So where our existing play place is, that would be where the front of the building would rest on the new location, but it's substantially within the same footprint of where we're at today.
And similarly, the parking has obviously changed, curbs and gutters and so on. Is that generally within the footprint of the existing parking area?
It is very similar, yes. So some of the radius and other things have changed a little bit for better circulation on site. And because now we have water quality detention and some other added features, we had to obviously modify our curbing and asphalt where those were. But it is, to answer your question, substantially compliant or substantially where it is today.
And what is the purpose of the area to the east side, the landscaped area there? It looks like lawn.
Substantially the same footprint.
Which area here?
Yeah, the landscaped area that's just behind the building or on the east side of
Here?
it.
Right here.
Right there, yeah. Is it just a lawn area, or is it outdoor seating, or part of detention?
It's just landscaping. A large percentage of our customers, over 50%, travel through this area. So we want to give every customer an equal experience. So in the dining room, we can enhance the experience with flat screen TVs and upscale decor and those type of items. For the outside customer, we can enhance their experience by having a nice landscaping area. And as they're traveling through the drive-through, traversing through here, it's a nice experience for them.
Okay. Julio.
Is your proposed building going to be green by any chance?
So McDonald's does a lot of steps currently to make our buildings green, so to speak. There's a lot of different measures for that. Federal government.
Talking about this site.
Yes, but I guess there's green in a number of ways. So I can give you some items we're incorporating in our buildings. Different systems of rating green buildings, rate them different ways. But for example, all of our HVAC equipment is super efficient. They call it by SEER rating, S-E-R rating, which makes it as friendly as possible for HVAC equipment. Our buildings use a membrane or TPO membrane roof, which is 97% reflective, UV reflective, and energy reflective, keeps the building cooler. And so we have a number of items like those that we use for the construction of the building, and then we also have a number of items we use outside the construction, which just have to do with packaging and recycling and those items to try to be sensitive as possible. And we also right-size our buildings. We only build what we need, not more than or not less than. So we're minimizing the footprint if we don't have to increase the footprint.
But you're not planning to get any kind of a LEED award out of this building?
This particular building style is not LEED certified. We're in the process from a global perspective at McDonald's, or actually from a U.S. perspective, of having our building LEED certified as an entirety, not specific to a site. So we can take some of those components and use them site after site. To actually get a LEED building certified per site is very expensive. If you're going to go LEED certification, it could be in excess of $25,000. Most of that's just administrative, but we do incorporate all those tactics into our designs. We use bamboo flooring. We use different. Not flooring. I'm sorry. We use bamboo components. We use components that are kind of manufactured and delivered to the site at the closest distance we can to reduce the impact on the environment from where we do it. We use materials that reproduce quickly or that are recycled. We use some decor companies like JBI that have partnered with Coca-Cola. Some of the chairs are made out of recycled Coca-Cola bottles. So these are just all things we do. Some of them are not in every restaurant, but these are things we do on a daily basis to reduce McDonald's impact on the environment.
You spoke a little bit about the materials, the predominance of brick. So this is not the typical McDonald building package, and perhaps that has something to do. Is this a unique, are the facades unique, or is this one that's more rarely built? I'm not sure I understand that.
Is this a standard?
So McDonald's standard is a stucco building. We think it's a good-looking building. It's cost-effective to build, and our life for our buildings are around 25 to 30 years tops, and we like to rebuild them like in this scenario here. Keeping in line with your design guidelines you've set in the city and staff, we've upgraded it substantially. So we don't typically do brick buildings. That's not the norm for us. Norm would be a stucco building.
So that would be difficult to certify, to customize a building to the city's design guidelines and then turn around and spend the time to get it certified as
so we're
LEED certification.
So from a corporate level, they're looking at certain components, which is basically the envelope, which can be modified by external cladding, finishes, that sort of thing. But we're trying to certify all of our equipment that goes on there, the energy efficiency rating of that, the types of HVAC units we use, the materials we use in the store, the number of recycled materials, things like membrane roofs, things like that we can carry through to multiple jurisdictions that are generally accepted. Then those are the items we're looking at focusing our attention on. But things like brick and stone, it's usually dictated by design guidelines.
Very good. Hello.
I have one other question. Did either one of you do the drawings of this particular set of plans that we are now looking at?
You mean drawings? So Mike is a civil engineer.
Did he actually draw it? Did you actually draw this up? I have a question then. Can you tell me why on every one of the pages from site plan to signage, whatever they are, all the way from landscaping, et cetera, you said that all of them are illustrative, and I have a problem with that. Illustrative.
Jan has an answer for that too, just in terms of the process and the fact that this is the PDO and then we go to the site plan. So I think it's.
Well, when they come in with these PDO applications, they also are coming in doing the site plan process concurrently, and so typically they're processing a conceptual site development plan with the PD overlay plan, and the reasons why actually staff suggests that they put that note on there that they're illustrative, because if they go through the PDO process and it gets, like if that wasn't on there, that note, and they go through the PDO process and get approved by you, and then during the final site development plan, some engineering comes up or building related issue comes up that causes some specific numbers to change, this gives it a little bit more flexibility for a minor modification to occur between the PDO and the final site plan. So you're not bringing it back to you guys again to say, okay.
Unfortunately, it also gives enough room to drive a 18-wheeler through.
That's right. That's my problem with it. I have a question now, based on what has just been stated into the record. Suzanne, do you have a comment on this, one way or the other?
Well, I mean, you all approved the PDO the way that it's submitted, so I think anything that goes off the substance of it, that would be a problem if the plan comes in substantially different or substantively different. I mean, I suppose we've heard that there's some engineering, we heard about the landscaping, I mean, those types of things. If there are changes to it for engineering type reasons and it doesn't alter what's been approved in the criteria, then those kinds of changes could be made.
I guess the way I would look at it, it would have been a simple condition of approval saying that the staff, and only the staff, has the opportunity to really change this after we have approved it. Because the way it stands right now, and I would just say this, I'm a little bit concerned, and I'm not trying to be offensive to anybody, But the term illustrative, it just means that. We've been seeing, even since we walked in here, we went from, 5 or 6 signs down to 4 signs. Now we're arbitrarily thinking about 5 signs. The momentum here is kind of disturbing to me. I'm very used to when you see a plan come to a decision body that it is pretty much the plan that you're going to see from here on out. I have a real issue. That's one of the reasons why I would just say that I'm not crazy about the PDO, because it opens up more doors than it closes.
Yeah, but I'll just say, I mean, we've all seen plans come through for, let's take a multifamily development where we have one developer come in and here's my illustrative, but things like the architecture aren't really part of the criteria, but they want to show you what their vision is. So we have this vision, and then 5 years later, it gets built according to plan, but it's not exactly what you saw on the slides. And so, I mean, I'm sure you've seen that come through as a planner.
I've seen that many times, but I've never seen it in a plan where every page that we're supposed to be reviewing is illustrative. And I have like I say, I personally have a problem with that. A site plan, I mean, basically, it's just very, very blurred. The lines are very blurred.
But that's not the site plan.
It does say site plan here. It says illustrative site plan.
Right, but he's going through the site plan process.
I just want to point out, every PD overlay plan you guys have reviewed has that note on there. And it doesn't give the applicant the option to go out there afterwards and change things completely. They have to come in with a final site development plan, and the city staff reviews that site development plan in concordance with the PDO. Believe me, if there's something that's way out of whack from the plan you approved, we would...
Is it, we're making a recommendation to the site, to the DRC or whatever you call yourselves. That's all I'm hearing.
You're proving
because you can change anything after the fact, and that's where I'm disappointed.
Well, you're proving a PDO based on the criteria for PD overlays that's in the code and what's been last in the staff report.
But I mean, if you approve 5 signs and they decide to move the signs from where they're shown on the diagram, they can probably do that in the site plan, but they can't change the fact that they're only allowed, I mean, hypothetically, if that's what gets approved, they can't change the fact that they were allowed 5 signs with a certain height. Now, because the plan's illustrative, they can probably change the location, they can change the size, and that type of thing, but they can't change anything that was actually approved as far as the criteria. And as far as what you approve in the PDO, it has to be in conformance with that.
Yeah, the PDO sets the parameters for later discussions. So as you get more detailed, you just keep going down this funnel and you get more and more detailed through the site design. But everything down below has to be consistent with what was approved. So it has to be, PDO is consistent with underlying zoning, and then you get down to the site plan, and it's consistent with the PDO that was approved. So it just keeps going down.
My understanding of this on previous questions of the same manner is that the only thing we're approving is what is on sheet 1. Everything else we can just tear up and turn into confetti in one matter. Is that correct? That's what's on sheet 1, what's on the first page is the PDO. It's only everything that's on that one. That's how I remember it's been explained. So everything else is illustrative. But if we approve that, what's on there is what we're approving. And if it's not on there, then there's no limitations. Is that? And I'm talking about the very, very first.
The front page.
Yeah, sheet number 1.
Which essentially says that sheet is establishing the same kind of parameters for this PDO that normally would show under the zoning ordinance for a particular zoning category as far as setbacks, height limitations, square footage allowances, that sort of thing, including things like the sign ordinance. So variables on how they arrange it, where they place it, really don't come into the substance of a PDO we approve. It's strictly the details that are on the front page.
Yeah, and
that's the way I understand it.
That's the way I understand it, but this doesn't have a lot of details on the front page.
It has a signage summary.
Huh?
It has a signage summary, and it has some notes.
Which does not match the staff report.
In all the PDOs you've done, I guess the question is, have you seen any that when they were finally approved were substantially different from what you approved as a PDO when it got through the site plan process? Think back through all the PDOs you've done and that were finally constructed, what was the site plan and how different was it? And I think the argument would be that it's substantially the same. It had some details that's changed in terms of engineering and some site plan issues in order to meet function, but they don't change from the concept.
I think Pavlos has brought up something we need to make sure we all are clear on, and I have 2 points. Number one, what we're approving as a PDO is the front page, period. As far as legal requirements for any development that goes on that site, whether McDonald's proceeds with this plan or it gets sold to somebody else 3 years from now and they do something else, it is the front page with all of the restrictions, requirements for the PDO that we are approving.
That's the most essential thing. It's not all.
The second thing is, within that, we're assuming that any other requirements for utilities or else.
I just want to point out that the reason why that note is on there is because, for instance, on one page you're showing an 18-inch storm sewer in a certain location. Well, when engineering does their final reviews and he does his final drainage plans and stuff, something might have to change technically for that storm sewer location. That isn't part of the PDO that you guys look at and approve. It's on this plan because it's part of all this information. But that's why the illustrative note, if that storm sewer has to change, do you want to see that again? If that species of tree needs to be substituted by our landscape architect, the city landscape architect,
and that's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, that's why that
all we're committing to is what's on the PDO page. The other assumptions, and you have to make assumptions about process and standards. The other assumption is anything that the city, state, county, feds require as far as wastewater, as far as other utilities, as far as detention, engineering requirements, those are going to adhere to other published standards and rules.
Right.
And this illustrative site plan is provided for you all, so you have some point of reference that you're reviewing something, so you're not in this vacuum looking at this page full of text, you know,
Yeah. It gives us context, and then from that, we can discuss sanitary sewer and deciduous trees of a certain size.
That's fine. If you have questions about that, that's fine. I just I recommend not putting a lot of strong conditions on that, because we do have a city engineer and a city landscape architect that still have yet to do their final review of it, and they will deal with that technically.
Yeah, we don't put that burden on the planning commission to actually do the engineering to determine what the size of the pipe should be. It's just that's way beyond what I think you.
But I honestly don't know how you all could possibly review a PDO against your criteria with just that front page.
But giving us the other information gives us the opportunity to continue the process that staff and DRC has been conducting with the applicant, and that is to look at what's proposed and say, that looks like it might be a problem. What are you going to do about that? And that's all we're really trying to do here.
And that's fine. I mean,
And an amendment, much as what's recommended by staff, will end up reflecting on that signage schedule, signage summary on the front page. That includes code allowance, which is 1 square footage, and proposed, which is another, and then the staff recommendation. We've heard a little bit of discussion, and I think there's a reasonable proposed amendment that will come forward to prosper or die. All right. So, having had the sidebar about the philosophy of PDOs, thank you for your patience. Is there any other questions for the applicants at this point? Pavlos.
Yeah, I have some questions. You said that, and those are kind of a bit more general because you touched upon things. You said that the average lifespan of your buildings is 25 to 30 years.
Correct. The building could last longer, but we choose to rebuild them and somewhere in that time frame. There's different reasons why it could run longer or shorter. But if you were to ask us, in the perfect world, if you could say, could we rebuild a building every 30 years, we would love to do that. Sometimes there's economics or other things that come into play there.
And again, there's nothing wrong with the building. It's just effectively marketing.
Well, it's not really marketing. So is the facility current and relevant? Do we sell today what we sold 25 years ago? Will we sell in 25 years what we sell today? We don't know. We'll sell whatever the consumer tells us they want to purchase, and we'll continue to evolve our menu, the way we deliver that food and service, and the environment in which they experience that in. So really it's more remaining relevant in a time where we can easily become outdated.
And you talked about jobs, and you talked about that this will bring about an increase in jobs. And I know this is outside of the thing of the PDO, but because it's something that you brought up, I want to question, aside from construction jobs, you have a restaurant that's actually smaller. That would indicate to me that actually what we will see is a reduction of jobs, not an...
So
I think,
the theory...
hang on a second.
It's not within our purview,
Yeah,
is it?
no, but since, Pavlos, we need to move along. Let's get to a motion and the public hearing and so on.
Then I have a question for...
That really is outside our purview, and that's sort of a philosophical sidebar. I appreciate it, but let's not go there. Thank you. Did you have something else?
Yes, I do have a question for...
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve has a question for Ernie as well, apparently. All right, Ernie, you're back on.
On the staff report, page, well, on the conflicts and complications, on the third paragraph, that's in page 4, third paragraph of the sections conflicts and/or complications, you say, that's the third sentence, the amount of allowable signage for this site per sign code is 3 signs for a total of 133 square feet of sign face area. Page 4, about the middle, right above the Board of Adjustment cases.
Okay.
Okay. On page 1, on sheet number 1 of the cover sheet, in signage summary.
Right.
In this, it says code allowance 3 wall signs and 1 ground sign for square footage of 256.85.
That's taking both frontages into account. They did not, that chart does not break it down like this, using 1 frontage and then 2 frontages and then what they proposed.
Since the code does not allow to count both frontages on this property, that's not the code allowance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's the PDO is requesting that. That's what the PDO.
Well, there is a proposed, and then there is the section where it says code allowance, but that would be code allowance if the 2 frontages could be counted as contiguous, but it's not actually the code allowance for this property.
That's correct.
Okay. That's what I want to clarify. Thank you.
Steve.
Okay. The applicant has said, going back to the sign in the front, the big M, that their square footage is 577 or 57.77, and they measured it as a boxed. And you said that you actually measure it as just the yellow portion, not the air in between.
Yes.
What did you come up with?
The measurements were done by when I used to do the job, that's how I would measure it. So I didn't get the numbers exactly from the zoning person. And these guys actually met with her, so that's how they arrived at the number. And I did not measure it using that area. I did not calculate that amount.
Can I help you here?
Yes.
On the page that the applicant submitted with the building signs on, with the M, they have both the boxed area and the net area. So if you take that proportion and apply it to the boxed area of the monument sign, you can at least approximate what the actual area of the M would be.
But that's not listing the sign out in the street. And
No, I'm just saying that the M itself.
Yeah.
There's an M on the building that's smaller, okay,
Yes.
but it's proportional. So the numbers they gave you for the M on the building, the actual area of the M versus what it would be if you calculated it boxed, apply that to the boxed area that you know of for the sign on the street, and that'll tell you what the net area of the M alone is. It's just a proportion.
well, yeah, I've already figured that part out, but I'm trying to figure out on how it's going to work out, because if we're going to allow any difference, they're wanting to go up to the 299. All of a sudden, when they get back to a more final, if they're then go back to Ernie's way of measuring instead of the McDonald's way of measuring, where McDonald's is measuring it the full box and Ernie is measuring it just the yellow, there's a whole lot of air in between the yellow.
So in our discussion, we need to nail down what we expect staff to do in terms of final calculation for the actual signs.
Which is what I was doing, was trying to gather all the information so that when we sit here and we talk between us, then
As we're doing.
then we have something to talk about. Thank you, Ernie.
Okay.
All right. Anything else about signs or anything else for the applicant or for staff at this point? All right. I have the roster from the public hearing. I have two names. I have Steve Jenkins, and he says he favors the project and didn't mark whether he wished to speak. Do you wish to speak at this time? I see him shaking his head no. And then we also have Greg Merrill, I believe, who also favors the project. And does Greg Merrill, did you wish to speak at this time? He says no, he does not wish to speak, but he does favor the project. That is the extent of the names on the public hearing roster. If anyone else would like to speak about this, you can come up now and state your name and give us your opinion, either just as succinct as do you favor it, or you can lead the discussion on signage if you wish. I don't see anyone else volunteering. All right. Therefore, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing? Commissioners?
I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
All right. Closed and seconded. All of those in favor of that? And the public hearing is closed unanimously. Oh, I'm sorry. Kurt had the motion, and David had the second.
Seconded?
Yes, very good. Thank you. All right. I will remind the commissioners that we have a suggested motion, and that we can move to approve this and amend it, which gives us more flexibility than moving to not approve it. So with that in mind, is there anyone that would like to make use of our suggested motion prior to what I suspect will be a couple of amendments proposed?
I'd actually like to make a slightly different motion. I move the Planning Commission Resolution number 11-02 for McDonald's Restaurant Plan Development Overlay be approved with the condition that the PDO be revised to reduce the amount of allowed signage to no more than 3 signs for a total of 133 square feet of sign face area, and that the measurements are consistent with the actual code, and that the PDO cover sheet is corrected to show the proper code allowance under signage summary.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have motion and second about 100, basically as we have written, 133 square feet, and a note consistent with the code that, of course, is with one, considering one street, one side, and that the PDO sheet on the front be corrected to reflect those numbers. Any other discussion? Any discussion about that? Are we ready to vote?
I'm going to offer a comment. Good. I really have see no substantive objection to staff's recommendation for 4 signs, other than the general concern about why we have a sign code in the first place, and that is to limit the visual clutter. I think I'd be more, I don't want to use this word, sympathetic. I'd be more inclined to favor applicants' desire for more signs if they were at least making some effort to take advantage of what normally is a grounds for a variance, and that is to give them reasonable visibility, reasonable access for business purposes. With 2 frontages, that would presume that they would be locating one of those signs close to Rapp Street. Their nearest sign is 150 feet away. So I don't see that they're really looking to get the coverage the exposure on the other street. They're just using that as a technical way of getting more signage. Nevertheless, I'm not sure, given that most of the signs are on the building and are not all that visual clutter. I mean, you drive by McDonald's and you see 4 or 5 golden arches all over the place. I'm not sure they register as much more than one. I guess I would tend to vote no on the motion as presented and leave it as 4 signs. My only question then is going to be calculation of what that square footage is. At 1 square foot per of sign per 1.5 square foot of frontage, I believe that is the 256. Ernie, that's right? Okay. Okay, well, I guess I'm inclined to go back with the original motion, 4 signs for 256 square feet.
Any other discussion? I'm also going to vote no. I think I don't know if it's a concession, the change to a brick facade and extensive use of brick, that fits in with our design standards and sort of the nature of the downtown area, and I don't think it's unreasonable to allow 5 signs with the square footage that we discussed previously, so I'll vote against this proposal based on that.
Can we call that question?
Question has been called. All right, and that motion fails. And Doreen, you got Pavlos as making the motion in the second with Steve. All right, very good. All right, we need to get another motion on the table. I'll make a note here. Commissioners, going back to the original suggested, and then with amendments, perhaps?
With amendments. I move the Planning Commission Resolution Number 11-02 for McDonald's Restaurant Plan Development Overlay be approved with the condition that the PDO be revised to reduce the amount of allowed signage to no more than 4 signs for a total of 256.85 square feet of sign face area.
All right, and that is exactly as our original proposed, which I believe the 256 is what is listed as on the first page of the PDO code allowance, and 4 signs is also the number listed there. That is using a calculation regarding 2 frontages. Discussion about that.
We need a second.
I'll second that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. And so who got the second? So we have David again? All right.
Steve.
Oh, Steve. All right.
Seconded.
All right. And now discussion. Pavlos.
Just a couple of comments on what we brought before. The addition of the brick facade that was offered as a kind of compensation. My understanding that's required by the design guidelines. So it's not something that they did. It was something that they were required to do in order to follow and meet the design guidelines. When the applicant addressed the question that I had asked about the give and take on the issue of the PDO, their response was about the investment and the jobs. When I attempted to pursue that further, Chair pointed out, and correctly I think, that is not related to the PDO issue. So my understanding is that the applicant is asking for a variance from the city code, but is not offering anything in return.
Okay. Anything else? David's working on something. The alternates are able to discuss but not vote at this point as well. So. Okay, David.
I'm squeezing this out painfully because I'm not sure philosophically. I sincerely believe it. One of the things that the applicant is giving us is a rejuvenated business enterprise at the edge of downtown and on Santa Fe. They don't have to. Other older franchises they've abandoned in the past. it's not a major concession, but then, given what we've done in the past, given the two frontages, I'm not sure that the concession we're giving up in terms of the number and square footage of signs could be considered major either.
Very good. Linda?
I just have to make a couple comments on the signs. The front elevation, if you're driving Santa Fe, you just whiz past that building and you never see that McDonald's that's on the front elevation or the front side of that building. And then also on the non-drive-through elevation, that's what you see from Santa Fe. So you have the McDonald's sign and the M sign in the drive-through elevation. Nobody sees that unless they're actually going through the drive-through. So it's really, from a marketing perspective, it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. So I just had to put my 2 cents worth.
Very good. Anything else? Steve?
I don't personally have a problem with using the Wrap Street for your measurement variation. However, I would like to see some sort of a sign actually pointing somewhat towards Wrap Street so that you could have a reason on why you're using that variance. I've entered that McDonald's several times. I've gone from Santa Fe. I've gone from Wrap Street. And I think if you're going to be using the variance, you should at least have a sign that's facing that direction. And I would appreciate if you stayed with the measurement type you're doing with the block style signage instead of having the air not count. And I appreciate the way that you measured it by counting the air as being part of your signage.
But that's a comment, you're not offering an amendment.
For the question.
Okay, very good. And we've had the question called. So this is the suggested motion as you have before you, resolution number 11-02 for McDonald's restaurant plan development overlay be approved with the condition that the PDO be revised to reduce the amount of allowed signage to no more than 4 signs for a total of 256.85 square feet of sign face area. And everybody voted. Looks like everybody has. And that passes 6 in favor and 1 dissenting. Thank you very much, gentlemen. All right. We will put a few things away. We have another public hearing in a moment. And that is regarding City Park.
Could we have like a 3-minute break?
Would you like to take? Okay. If there's no objection, we'll have a 3-minute recess.
Or 5.
No objection.
Are we in recess?
Yes.
Yes. Uh-huh.
No, I did not get it.
All right.
Jan, I wasn't trying to make you feel uncomfortable or defensive or anything like that. I was just trying to figure out why.
Yes.
No, I don't
Yeah.
think again. But you know something? But there are other, in my opinion, the term illustrious is a much more deeper thing than having notes on this saying the plans are subject to change.
We are going to reconvene. With or without you.
I'll talk to you about it later.
Donkey care. Allocation works for them?
All right, let's see. And Jan, this is your presentation. Very good.
I got that one. I got it.
There was, yeah. All right. The subject of this is, well, this is case CDU 11-0001, City Bark conditional use at the location 6235 South Santa Fe Drive. And basically, City Bark is requesting a conditional use approval for an animal boarding and care facility at that location. The property is zoned B2 Community Business District, and Jan will make the presentation to us for this case.
Good evening, Commission. I'd like to first read into the record the list of exhibits. Exhibit A, the city staff report and attachments. Exhibit B, the application and attachments. Exhibit C, the area reference map. Exhibit D, the city comp plan, central area neighborhood and South Santa Fe corridor plan by reference. Exhibit E, the city zoning ordinance by reference. Exhibit F, the official zoning maps by reference. Exhibit G, the proof of posting. Exhibit H, the proof of publication. And Exhibit I, the public hearing roster.
All right, thank you.
Tonight is the applicant is City Bark. They have several doggy daycare. They have about 4 doggy daycares in the Denver Metro and Parker area. Tonight, they're requesting approval for conditional use to locate one of their animal boarding and care facilities at 6235 South Santa Fe Drive. That's located on this map, right in this location here. It has formerly been Britt Honda sales and service facility for quite a while, actually. The property is zone B2. To the north of the property is a commercial business. It's also zone B2. That's retail shops in there and automotive use behind the shops. On the east side of the property is Santa Fe and the railroad right-of-way, and then up above the railroad right-of-way is Littleton Cemetery. To the south of the site is that property is also zone B2. However, it has an old residential home on it that I think is it's a rental with several apartments in it. It's just point out it is a non-conforming use. So someday when the residential use goes away, it is a commercial use. And then to the west of this site is Hudson Gardens, which is zone plan development commercial. In April 2010, I believe many, if not all of you, were on the commission then, the council adopted an ordinance that defines animal boarding and care facilities and this ordinance also allows these facilities as permitted uses in the B1, B3, the I1 and I2 districts, the industrial districts. This ordinance that was approved last year allows these same uses as conditional uses in the B1 and B2 districts. Reason for that is because oftentimes our B1 and B2 properties are near residents, and sometimes these B1 and B2 properties are also shopping centers. So that was the reason for making them conditional uses in those 2 districts. I attached to the staff report a copy of that ordinance that was approved. It can refresh your memory on what was approved and the standards and requirements of these facilities. The applicant right now is actually under contract to purchase this property. It's for sale. She proposes to renovate the entire building to convert it to the doggy daycare, the animal boarding care facility. This would also include overnight boarding of the animals, grooming services, training services, sales of retail items, and other services which are allowed for this use. She's not proposing to do any building expansion, just do interior renovations and some sprucing up of the outside and all. A portion of, I got the sketch plan here. Right now, the area west of the building is a rather large fenced-in area that has been used to store, I don't know, service vehicles and other sort of debris and whatever. She's proposing to clean that area up, of course, and create the fenced-in play area for the dogs. She is, because this property to the south is zoned B2, but it has a residential use, the ordinance requires a 20-foot setback from the outdoor play area to this property. At any time when this property converts to commercial use, that setback will no longer be required, but at least until now, she's required to maintain that 20-foot setback. The existing access into the site, let's see, mainly for the site improvements, I think I mentioned in my staff report, because this property is developed and she's not doing anything to the property that would trigger the requirement for site development plan, she's doing a sketch plan. This is also something that was newly passed last year. She's utilizing the existing parking that's in front of the building now and striping that, and they've determined that they can provide 13 parking spaces in front of the building, which is similar to what was there previously. And and that's not a use that we actually have a specific parking requirement for in the code, so we defer to the user to define the amount that's needed. She, early on in the process, she asked about access on the property, and she was advised by our Public Works Director through CDOT that, as you know, CDOT controls all the access on Santa Fe, and she was wanting to see about getting to the signal so that her customers could have a safer and easier left turn and out movements from her property. So Charlie Bloston, the Public Works Director, advised her that if she did get the Vinewood Street access, that would cause the Santa Fe access to have to be closed, because that's what CDOT requires. So she then talked with South Suburban, plus also sent them a referral, and the staff with South Suburban and Hudson Gardens met with the Hudson Gardens directors, and they were all acceptable of an easement. However, actually providing the access easement across, it's goofy because they have this little strip of land that they own between there, which is strange, but they do. Anyway, this South Suburban staff and the Hudson Gardens Board don't have a problem with the access, but officially they do need to take that request to the district board. And I think I explained in my report, the applicant here didn't want to pursue that avenue until she actually got through her entitlement process tonight, closed on the property. If she does get that easement from South Suburban, then she will be closing the access and getting her necessary permits from CDOT to do the work in the right-of-way and do the curb, gutter, and sidewalk along there as well. I just kind of wanted to point out, because if for some reason the board doesn't give her the easement, and there's always that possibility, she will still be allowed to retain her current access. And just as a point of clarification, the access issue for this property exists regardless of what type of commercial use is on the property. She's here in front of you all tonight because she has a conditional use. But if another motorcycle dealership went in there, or a restaurant, or some other type of commercial use went in there that didn't require conditional use approval, we'd still be dealing with the access issue. They'd either be keeping the right in, right out they have now, or if they wanted to pursue this other one to the light, they'd be closing that access on Santa Fe. And as I pointed, and you all have a more detailed description of her proposed operation in her letter. She addressed all the points of the code requirements on operation hours and all the restrictions that were addressed in that ordinance. She's proposing to comply with those. I did send it out for review and referral. A lot of those, any of the comments, we didn't get very many comments back, but those that did come back were technical in nature, dealing with closing the access and, connecting the swimming pool to the sanitary sewer and that sort of thing. She's not required to do a site development plan, but she will be doing civil improvements that will require submittal of those plans for review at the time before she does her improvements to that, and if she gets the access approved by South Suburban. And she's going to do some regrading and everything to correct the slope problems on the west side. So she's aware of drainage plans and all that sort of thing she needs to submit, be reviewed by city. I listed in the staff report the legislative purpose that the Planning Commission uses to consider these conditional uses. Section 10.8.1 of the zoning ordinance addresses all the general criteria for all conditional uses. And then I listed also the criteria from Section 10.4.15, which is the new section regarding the boarding facilities themselves specifically. Also in that pages 4 through 6, I noted the justification and how staff felt that her proposal meets the comp plan and all the criteria for the conditional use. And in that, staff finds that all those criteria are met or will be met with her construction and her use. And we do recommend approval of the conditional use in the Planning Commission Resolution number 11-03 that's attached. And I'm here to answer some questions. Nicole DeMauro is the City Bark representative. She's here also, and so is her architect.
Pablo.
So I just want to reiterate what I think I understand what you're saying, that despite all the reference to the access issues, we're not voting on access. We're simply voting on conditional use.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out. I was a little concerned that if there wasn't some clarification on there, you might suggest a condition of approval of getting the access easement from South Suburban or something, and that's kind of putting it out into their hands. And I just wanted to kind of point that out so there wasn't any confusion that way.
No, and I appreciate that, but it was just in terms of us, the decision as to whether the access will be granted or not is in the hands of CDOT
and or South Suburban.
Suburban. That's not something we can approve or disapprove one way or another.
It'd be a little different if you were looking at a brand new property that was proposing a daycare or some commercial type use that was going to be impacting a residential neighborhood, that sort of thing. That's kind of where that would fall under. But I think in this situation on a main commercial highway like Santa Fe that's got access control by power beyond us, I just wanted to point that out. So.
Okay, thank you.
And just the fact that any kind of commercial user is going to be dealing with this situation regardless. So,
Craig.
Dan, I have a question. Looking at zoning 10-2-16 under B2, it makes reference to arterial street access is necessary because of the type of use. Is that applicable here, where it actually require arterial street access?
well, is that an arterial access, or is that?
Vinewood would not be
Vinewood would not
arterial,
be,
but
no, Vinewood
I guess it
would
comes
not
to
be.
the question
That'd be a
of
local
access.
collector
Would
at
access
best.
then be at the signal, which is a block away or so, or?
Yeah, I think exactly that, because I think you've got to look at what's, first of all, you don't have control over CDOT restricting certain access off of Santa Fe, but if the point of Vinewood Street is basically the same as, well, one of the reasons why Vinewood is built all the way down to Denver Seminary was to foresee providing access for these Santa Fe properties to a safe signalized location. And since there's so few of them allowed along Santa Fe, that's the Hudson Gardens location is approved one. So eventually Vinewood Street's going to work its way down to the mental health facility when that property in between Denver Seminary and mental health facility redevelops, so that they're on the north side of Lee Gulch. So that way, that facility could also get safer access.
I think the proposal makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, eventually that's the plans, I think, for Vinewood is to provide And if these other properties on Santa Fe redevelop, that's kind of the plan to go, is to get them to signalized access. The same situation kind of goes further south where Maplewood is, because that's the other approved location for a signal.
I guess my bigger concern is the language that's in our code that could be read as saying access would be required for a B2 zone off of an arterial street, whereas it might be intended to say that it would normally be located on an arterial street. So,
yeah, we can look at that language. I think the intent certainly, as Jan said, to say that because it's a major, it's an attractive use, it brings people from a large area, it needs access to an arterial, and so it has ready access even though it's not immediate. So we're trying to get the best access possible onto that arterial.
Because it's immediate access, the arterial isn't terribly desirable if you've driven down that right turn lane and had to make a 90-degree turn in with somebody bearing down on you at 65 miles an hour, which I've done. Yeah.
Did you catch the reference he made to that, where it was? So I can't find
Anything else?
I can't find
Julio?
it.
No? All right.
Craig, could you repeat the reference that you gave in the ordinance?
it's under section 10-2-16, the B2 business district definition, and it's in that first paragraph.
All right. If there's no other questions for staff, or we'll anticipate that they perhaps come up later, then does the applicant have a presentation, or perhaps are there questions for the applicant or the architect? And if you would, state your name for the record.
My name is Nicole Del Moro, and I, with a lot of help from my husband, started City Park 8 years ago. In the last 8 years, we've grown the business to 4 locations. Jan was correct in her count. We have 2 locations in Denver, 1 location in Parker, and 1 location in Inglewood. And what we're attempting to do tonight is to get the permission to basically relocate our Inglewood facility into the 6235 South Santa Fe. And the reason we're actually looking to move that facility is that is our 1 location that doesn't really meet our branding and our portfolio. The other 3 facilities are very high-end, very upscale facilities. We have a very strong reputation in this industry. They, in addition to having a look and feel that's very nice, they also have that outdoor dog park area, which has hills and tunnels and, yes, an actual swimming pool. And this particular location is small, and it doesn't allow for the, much room outside and even in the interior for the different things that we like to do. I think that, I guess the 2 issues that I'm assuming that you guys would be concerned about would be noise and odor issues with this type of use. And I just wanted to talk a little bit briefly about our operations and how we address those, and ultimately give you a little bit of feedback from one of our neighbors in actually pretty much a residential area that we've got a facility located. But from a noise standpoint, we really do work very hard to minimize barking. Now, obviously, saying that dogs aren't going to bark is saying that people aren't going to talk. But, most of those dogs that you hear in your neighborhood that are barking in their backyards are barking out of boredom and frustration. Clearly, in a daycare setting, there's not going to be a lot of boredom going on. We have a lot of activities planned. We also are monitoring those dogs. They're not alone. They're, when they're in play group, they're always supervised by one of our staff. And, a lot of that barking, too, that you hear is typically dogs that can see what's going on the other side of their fence. Well, we are putting in some of it already exists, but any new fencing that we need to add from an exterior standpoint will be 8-foot solid fencing. 2 reasons for that. One is minimizes the dog's ability to, actually 3 reasons really, minimizes the dog's ability to see what's on the other side of the fence, therefore they're not distracted by that. Secondly, it certainly makes the likelihood of a dog getting over the fence slim to none. In fact, we've never had a dog scale an 8-foot fence in our years. And thirdly, obviously, an 8-foot solid fence does also act as a noise buffer. The other thing is just from a staff training standpoint is we use we call them timeouts, so we actually use a phrase called bummers, and what it is it's just it's a training technique that we've adopted from some local trainers, and it actually happens to be a similar technique that I use with my own children. And so basically, if a dog is exhibiting an undesirable behavior, like excessive barking, we tell them time out, and we basically remove them from the playgroup. You know, maybe they just have to come sit beside us, or we might put them in a crate, and it's about a 30-second thing. It's a very quick thing. They pick it up pretty quick. But so not only are we designing the facility to minimize noise, but we are also, from a behavioral standpoint, working to minimize noise. From an odor standpoint, well, I think first and foremost is that if our facility has an odor issue, that certainly doesn't go with our reputation of being a high-end upscale facility, and it would hurt our business. In order to make sure that we don't have a problem, first of all, we pick up all feces on a daily basis. We disinfect all areas on a daily basis, and on a weekly basis for all of our outdoor areas, we use a natural enzyme that and I'm not a chemist, but they explained to me that it essentially eats the organisms that cause odors from urine and feces. With that said, and I don't know if I'm allowed to read a letter that I got from one of my neighbors.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have an 11,000 square foot building, which is significantly larger than what we're proposing for here. That's located in Parker, Colorado, in the Stonegate neighborhood. I don't know if you're familiar with Stonegate, but it's a high-end residential neighborhood, and it has a commercial district near the Jordan and Lincoln Road area. In that district, immediately on our west side, so our two adjacent west side neighbors, one is a Montessori preschool, who, before we opened, were adamantly against us because of the unknown of what impact it might have on their preschool. Since we've opened, we haven't had a single complaint from them, and in fact, they've asked us to donate to their silent auction. So I think we've, had a good relationship. And the other place that's adjacent to us is actually a K-8 public charter school, and they're the ones. Sorry.
Let me just stop you for a moment. I'm assuming that you have permission from the letter writer.
Yes, I specifically asked if I could get a letter for tonight.
And then we will, at the very least, need a copy of it for the record, for our public
have this
record. Very good. All right. And
do you want it up here even? I don't know if
we'll just need it.
read. Okay.
And with that, go ahead.
Okay, and well, it's dated today, and it says, "To whom it may concern, and we have the good fortune to have City Bark as our neighbor in Parker, Colorado. When we heard a dog center would be next door to our school, North Star Academy, we weren't sure about the noise, etc. After 3 years, we are very happy to have this group next to us. You would never know that this is a facility for canines. It is immaculately kept and very quiet. The yard is enclosed, and we never see or hear the animals." And then, in parentheses, "I fear my students are the noisy ones. We just may send a few over for obedience training." They are truly the perfect neighbors in every way. Sincerely, Cynthia A. Hawes, principal of North Star Academy.
Very good.
And that's all I really had to say.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? I had a question in your, let's see if I can find it. In your proposal somewhere here, play area, no, I can't find it, but as I recall, the play area, you use pea gravel through a portion of the play area. Referring to dust control, particularly if it's not pea gravel, what kind of surfaces and maybe a percentage of the area that would perhaps become bare dirt and thus generate dust. So maybe kind of tell us a little bit the hills and tunnels and how.
I probably am not. I would be very general on giving you percentages, but obviously, well, the problem with dirt is not just dust, but also dirt very easily turns into mud. So we do minimize the use of dirt in our facilities. Now, we always have some areas that are dirt because dirt is gentlest on the dog's feet.
Okay.
And particularly, we'll use dirt like in the hills and tunnels part because it just works well there.
Understandable.
In most of our other areas, it's pea gravel or I think 1.5-inch river rock underneath AstroTurf. So
Okay. All right.
we've got some of that there too.
Okay, so it's that's all permeable, but probably controls erosion pretty well to have the AstroTurf. All right. the hills and tunnels, looking at this, is perhaps a third of, the pool takes a big section out, but there's an open area. The hills and tunnels and pool and open are roughly equal, one-third, one-third, and one-third. That's all considered to be
The play area.
the play area. Okay, very good. What do you anticipate in the setback area?
For now, nothing.
Okay.
I do believe that property is actually up for sale currently, and I suspect that it will eventually become commercial, and when it does, it'll just become another open play area, probably either AstroTurf or pea gravel.
Okay. Until that point, would it just...
We're just blocking it
going to
off
be-
and not
okay.
putting any money into it.
Sure. And you won't put pea gravel or anything down in that area either?
I'm not actually sure exactly what's in there now, but most likely no,
Okay.
because we're just simply not going to use it.
All right. I was just curious. Any other? Yes, David.
Nicole, could you run us through what your normal traffic pattern is for the day? I presume it's heavy into drop-off in the morning, pick-up in the evening?
We consider our busy time from 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 p.m. In the evening.
Thank you.
How many dogs do you expect to, or how many customers do you expect to have on a daily basis out of this facility?
Well, capacity for daycare will be 75 dogs, and I would love it if we had that many, and 2 of my facilities do have in excess of that, including that Parker facility on a daily basis. However, capacity isn't obviously what you normally have on a daily basis, so I think probably we'll average, this will probably be a couple years after we open too, but I hope to average in like the 60s on a daily basis.
Okay. Steve?
But to put that in perspective, that Parker facility, we have 109 kennels in there, so it's significantly, we have probably an extra 40% dogs.
And how many do you have in the Inglewood facility now?
Right now, it's 30 dogs capacity. I mean, it's very tiny, and quite honestly, it's not profitable because it's too small. So.
Okay. Steve?
I see the sign-up sheet that you had for the neighbors. A couple of them had said no on support. Do you know what their issues were?
The auto repair shop, this whole thing was kind of a little bit of a rush job. We only have 90 days to close on this property, so I basically had one day to go out and talk to everybody, and I was very lucky to find everybody. He said that he would be willing to go and take a look at our other facilities, and then he might not have an issue. But his concern that he verbalized to me at that point is that they have a family-oriented business. They like to do cookouts on the weekends on their, at the auto repair shop in that property, and he was concerned about the noise of the dogs. But again, it was more, I sort of said, well, I need to get this turned in tomorrow. If you're not, sure, can you just say no? And so that was how I submitted it.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners? All right. We've got a public hearing roster with one name, and that's, I believe, the adjacent neighbor, Dennis Tricky, and owns the business and the property just north of this. And if you'd like to, let's see, it says you do not favor the project and that you would like to speak. So this is your chance. Go ahead and state your name for the record.
My name's Dennis Tricky. I own the property at 6227 South Santa Fe, directly north of this property. And my wife and I have owned that for roughly 5 years. We have two tenants in the property. It's 2 retail shops. The one closest to the building in question would be the Colorado Guitar Company, and they sell and do some manufacturing, refinishing guitars. The other property is rented to Hill Commercial Construction, who does mostly builds medical offices and does outside exterior refinishing of commercial properties. I found out, Nicole called me in January and explained that she wanted to put the kennel here. And she did ask me to write a letter on it, which I did sent her an email at the time, and told her that I was opposed to it. And I also later wrote a letter to Charles, an email to Charles Boston, and had sent a copy of that to Jan Dickinson, the principal planner. My primary, problem with the it sounds like a zoning variance or conditional use on this property is not so much the noise factor, although being a real estate broker a number of years, I know that a lot of people don't like kennels next door. But it's primarily the closing off of Santa Fe and coming into Vinewood, because that forces anyone coming in off Santa Fe to go through our property. And we've had even when Brett Honda was there, we had quite a few people would cut through there with trailers and sometimes even block the entrance of the property so that customers couldn't get in. So by blocking off Santa Fe to the building in question, that leaves only one entrance, and it's through our parking lot and through the back of our building. And the last time I checked, no one was helping to pay us for maintenance of the asphalt in the parking lot. And the other problem we have with it is that some of the customers will park in our lot and walk over to that building. So I did write Nicole that I was real negative, very negative on blocking off Santa Fe Drive. And those are the primary reasons. If traffic gets to be enough in our parking lot, there could be a danger. You also have some delivery trucks that go through. Even when Britt Honda was there, they have a route. They go through our parking lot and cut around the back of the building to go into Britt Honda, and I think that'll increase. I'm doubtful they're going to come in through Vinewood. They're going to cut across our property, come in right off Santa Fe, and no one's paying us for maintenance or the nuisance of additional traffic and parking. The building we have is a smaller building, only has 10 spaces in the front. When they take some of our spaces, it is after all private property, it is hard on the tenants, and they've been keeping the parking lot quite full lately. So those are my primary objections to the business going in.
Let me do this. You sent us this diagram, and maybe we should get that onto the document later. Do you have an extra in white right there with you, or is it maybe Jan looks like she's reaching? If there's an extra one there.
There's one here.
Okay, and then if we could get that there, it would probably be helpful to identify, whoops, now we need to reposition.
Jan, you need to meet Jan.
Jan can help you with that. Once we get zoomed in, you have identified on there as my property. It's where the little A is, and those parking places you referred to in front.
Yeah, there's, I believe, 10 spaces in front.
Right. And I think this will be helpful. I think we can see part of a large truck passing by in front, so that's, and there's the symbol a little further up is for 85. That's Santa Fe right there.
Right. This is Santa Fe here, where the truck is. Often we have trucks that come in between these two buildings here and will travel through the back of the building and bring in deliveries, often UPS trucks.
And that's when it was the Honda dealership, as you're saying.
When it was a Honda dealership. Of course, there's no one coming through now.
Right.
But I did have some complaints on that from the tenants, and especially complaints from this auto paint shop, because they're afraid that dust is going to wreck the paint job.
Sure.
And we're complaining, often about that, which I couldn't do anything about.
Right.
Did you ever consider putting your own fence in there on the backside?
I have. I thought there might be some fire danger, with blocking off access to the Brit Honda if they had a fire there. But it never was a big enough problem, I guess, at that point. But I look at it now and I think, it will be a bigger problem if they have no access to Santa Fe here.
Mm-hmm.
If this is all blocked up, the only way they can get in is through the back here. And my bet is that they're going to come in off Santa Fe anyway and go through my property.
And that reflects in your proposal for fencing there.
Well, I suggested that if the variance is or the conditional use is approved, that they be required to put on their south of our property, put a solid fence there, so that someone can't park their car on our property and then walk through.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, even when Britt was there, for one reason or another, maybe it's because we striped our parking lot or something, but people would like to park there and walk over sometimes. And it is, I did get complaints from the tenants there. We have posted no parking signs, towing signs, but of course, by the time you get a tow truck out there, the people are gone.
Understood.
It takes about an hour or so to get them out.
I'm unclear as to the nature of what the situation would be along Santa Fe once CDOT, if all the pieces fall into place, what kind of barrier, is it a Jersey barrier that would be placed there? I think maybe staff might have an idea.
Well, I don't think legally they can block us off because we don't have access through Vinewood.
No, I meant as far as CDOT requiring in the front of the city park for that to be blocked once, if it's, as I say, if everything falls into place, the Vinewood access is granted, then CDOT requires that front to be blocked. And I'm curious as to the nature of what that would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here, go ahead.
I think Jan.
Well, it's my understanding from engineering that it would be, vertical curb and sidewalk. It would just, because as you can see, there is that on the other two sides of the access cut. So it would just be to finish that edge off and remove the actual access cut.
Which probably wouldn't really preclude somebody from pulling in there.
The only thing is we'll find probably more out from CDOT when she actually, if she does get that easement from South Suburban, and she has to get permits from CDOT to do the work in their right of way to close the access. So we'll probably get better specifications from them at that point. But engineering, what they indicated is they thought it would be, curb gutter and sidewalk, vertical curb gutter and sidewalk.
There's, and of course, if somebody asks, there's always the possibility that you could fence this in a manner with fencing compatible with the ordinances of the city.
And I just wanted to interject, since he is asking about a solid fence.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of wondering about solid fence in that location. I was checked the South Platte River Corridor design objectives and guidelines, and that document actually discourages solid wood fencing visible from the right-of-way like that, and recommends like a open mesh fencing or something like that. So I just wanted
something like
to,
ornamental iron that was 3 feet tall. That would stop pedestrian traffic as well as.
Yeah, I had first suggested maybe bollards, because that would impede the vehicular traffic. But when I was talking with Mr. Trickey this afternoon, he was still concerned that people could park in his lot and walk through with the bollards. So. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know about the solid wood fencing. That would not meet the objectives of the design guidelines.
Right, but there probably is fencing that would somehow fit.
Open fencing, yeah.
Right, and preclude all but the most determined pedestrian access.
Can I ask a clarification of Jan? Sure. You're talking about fencing between
Mr. Tricky's property and the subject property, not parallel right along the edge of Santa Fe.
Correct, yeah. Because otherwise, he's asking for a solid fence from here to here. I mean, typically, we don't even allow solid fencing in a front setback that's that high. So, or solid fencing or fencing that high in the front setback, and the design guidelines recommended against or strongly discouraged solid fencing like that, for an aesthetic reason. So, I don't have an issue about solid, of course, behind a building, but I just wanted to let you know that. So if you do decide to make this a condition of approval, we go with the fencing design that would meet those guidelines.
All right.
Have a variance on fencing.
Well, that's not our jurisdiction. There are standards about fencing, and I can conceive of things that would be acceptable, yet would stop pedestrians.
Yeah, okay. I guess my concern was like putting posts, they would park and then walk, you can walk through the posts. And
exactly.
That would be no improvement over what,
That would force them to park in front of your tenants, and then they would walk through, and yes, as you say, that's difficult to enforce. For people that maybe aren't putting this into context, I did go over there this afternoon. This is basically where years ago there was a light and Ridge Road came down across the street, and there's still the metal plate where you would pull up and it would activate that light so you could turn out onto Santa Fe. If you went straight across, you would be able to continue up Ridge Road prior to the railroad depression. And that probably, historically, people got in the habit of pulling in there right directly where your property was and accessing others along there. I can't remember how long ago that was, but I know I'd done that before, and it was a difficult maneuver to get over to where that plate was to activate the light. Your building has always been fairly close there, but you can see that even before they put the wires in the street, it had that pressure plate to get the attention of the traffic signal at that location. So there's also an increasingly severe elevation change as you move to the west. It's virtually level adjacent to Santa Fe, and then about a 3-foot elevation change that is paved the further west you go. So there's a little bit of elevation difference. The gate was closed, and the portion behind that building labeled my property on this picture, I couldn't see, and I didn't realize the trucks actually would go behind your building to access that adjacent property.
Well, yeah, there is a space between the building and there's a fence back there. You can't tell from here, but it's right where those cars are parked behind it, right here.
All of these, of course, you can't reasonably expect the property to stay vacant, and there is that dynamic. Your property is difficult because you don't have the prospect of access to Vinewood. All of the other 4 contiguous properties there do eventually, should that result in, as redevelopment occurs. So, anything else, commissioners? I've rambled a bit. All right.
The only thing I have to say, can reiterate, is I understand your access issues, but the issue in front of us is not one. Unfortunately, that's not what we get to vote on. We get to vote on the conditional use, not on the issue of access.
But it does, your approval will affect our property when you have people driving through it.
The easement from South Suburban and CDOT deciding to close the access would do, but...
Well, my understanding is that they just won't allow 2 accesses. If they decide to move if City Bark decides to move the access to Vinewood, then they have to close up Santa Fe. Although the problem's alleviated if you leave the access to Santa Fe.
I understand that. I just want to reiterate that in terms of what our jurisdiction is, that's not That's not the application in front of us. It's not about access. If we approve the application, they may choose to pursue the access issue, pursue not the access issue. That's my understanding of it. So definitely, I think that making sure that you discuss this with CDOT and with South Suburban, as well as hopefully between neighbors, and figure out a way to sort it out. That's generally better than getting the regulatory authorities involved.
Right.
But I just want to...
Well, I personally, I see a problem developing here, and I kind of want to end it before it starts. You know, we've had a fair, I can't say that we didn't have some traffic coming through when Britt Honda was there, but when you alleviate the access on Santa Fe completely, that amount of traffic I know is going to go up. If they can get in by cutting across our parking lot and go through there. And the last time I checked, no one was paying me annually to do asphalt maintenance. And you know, we do have to do asphalt maintenance annually on that for traffic coming through. And it keeps getting more and more as the price of oil goes up.
If I could just make a comment. Condition number 2 of your conditional use under, what is it, B2, the accessibility and patterns of pedestrian and vehicular traffic, including type and volume of such traffic, location of points of ingress and egress, and adequacy of off-street parking. I mean, if the commission were to find that this type of use being conditional is going to impact this condition, you could make the fence a condition if she were to cut off access from Santa Fe. There are other remedies available to the citizen, including he could bring a trespass action, he could bring a nuisance type claim against his neighbor if it were to happen. So there are other remedies he can pursue, but it is available to the commission under that particular criteria, that if you wanted to make it a condition, I think that you have the authority to do that, and you do have enough on the record to do it. So either way, the commission wants to go on that.
All right. Any further discussion? Any further questions for Mr. Trickey? All right. We're still in the public hearing portion. That was the only name on the roster. There was one that was crossed out. And at this point, though, thank you. If anyone else wanted to speak about this issue, this is your chance. Seeing none, may I have a motion to close? Oh, yes.
I just want to clarify a little bit as to why we arrived with the Vinewood access. It wasn't that we looked at this property and instantly said we want to access Vinewood. It was in talking to the city that, one, it was presented as a possibility to us, and secondly, the cities very strongly recommended that we pursue this. And while I agree that I think being forced into making a choice, whereas I did notice tonight that McDonald's has both accesses, but anyways, if we're forced into making a choice, I think Vinewood is the better access. I mean, people heading north right now have to make a U-ey at the light and come back down and cut in. Now they would turn into Vinewood and come around, and anybody then who's exiting our property to go back north is automatically going to want to use Vinewood too. So I think at least 50% of the time, Vinewood is going to always be the preferential access point for everybody. So I guess that's my...
Can I ask a question specific on that? Are there any specific steps that you're thinking or planning to take, assuming that the conditional use is approved and you purchase the property and you get the easement and CDOT takes its decisions, but to address the concerns of your neighbor?
I mean, I think the easiest and least expensive thing is I doubt Britt Honda ever posted signs in their lobby. And keeping in mind, we have recurring customers. We have relationships with these people. They don't just stop in and buy something from us and never come back. We can certainly post signs in our lobby expressing, our desire for people to please use the Vinewood access. And I really believe that the vast majority of our customers will respect those wishes. A good relationship with them.
And if I may, the current sign the bigger sign or the thing that you have, is there any room on it to be able to say entrance from Vinewood? I mean, I see that in a lot of different signs where they will indicate.
We haven't even looked at signage yet. At this point, we're just trying to focus on getting the use, and then we have to get a civil engineer because there is a slope issue. We're going to explore all those options after tonight, so providing it's approved, of course.
Don't start with signage.
But yes, that's, I mean, we will do what we can from a signage standpoint to, we want to be good neighbors. We don't want to have an adversarial relationship with our neighbors. That doesn't benefit anybody, so.
All right, then. Sir?
Obviously, if you put a sign on Santa Fe, people aren't going to think a lot of them aren't going to think to go around to Vinewood and go in. They're going to come in off Santa Fe. And that even, emphasizes my point more that it is going to create a problem for me because when they put a sign on Santa Fe, then close their entrance off, where are they going to go? They're going to go through my parking lot. And, maybe the city people that Nicole talked to, maybe they didn't consider doing this, how it would impact my property or other neighbors. But it definitely will increase traffic to our parking lot, no doubt about it, and as well as parking in our parking lot.
Okay, thank you. All right, then, do we have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I move that the public hearing, do you want a separate motion just for the public hearing, or you want me to use both of them?
I'd rather have separate motions.
I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
That was Kurt for the second. And then David, there we go. That's unanimous. All right, and then
I move that Planning Commission Resolution number 11-03 for City Park, 6235 South Santa Fe Drive be approved.
Second that.
That was Steve on the second. All right, discussion then.
I want to say that I'll put it in like this, and anybody that wants to make any amendments, make amendments so that we can just move it a little faster.
Very good. Any other discussion? Commissioners, anything? Let me say that I think the neighbor, Mr. Trickey, has a credible point, and, from visiting there, but I think it's one that could be rather easily resolved. There's some dynamics with CDOT and the Vinewood access. It occurs to me that for this location, it's probably people perhaps coming from Highlands Ranch or Point South that would drop off an animal, and they aren't going to be able to turn across the traffic to enter, and will very quickly discover that Vinewood is the option and a better option, a safer option, even if they're traveling in the opposite direction when they're dropping off an animal. When they pick that animal up, they're almost forced to then, reverse that process. So I think Vinewood is I certainly hope that could be one of the elements of this. The issue really before us is not about the access, but about this use and the traffic and the situation that the neighbor has experienced. I am a little bit reluctant to put this in the conditional use as an amendment, anything about a fence. It makes sense to me, and much as I have done with my neighbors, you work things out with one and split the cost, and perhaps with the other, you simply build the fence that meets your needs on your property. So, with that said, anyone else, any discussion?
Just a quick comment. If I had my dogs in the car, I would not want to make that turn, the right-hand turn into that building, because you're going 45 miles an hour, and it's really hard to decelerate, and then all the cars behind you are going that speed. So the Vinewood access would certainly be preferable.
And Pablo?
I've used that building on a few occasions when it was Honda, and coming in from north, not from Highlands Ranch, and if there was a Vinewood entrance, I would have used that. I always hated trying to come in. That being said, I think that Mr. Trickey's concerns are very, very legitimate. I sincerely hope that as neighbors, the two of you will be able to figure out a better solution than one that we as a governmental body will dictate. I'm really hesitant to try to come in here and say that we will find what the solution would be without necessarily knowing how that problem could resolve. But
Okay. Any further discussion?
I would agree that I would prefer to have the fence issue be settled between neighbors instead of a planning commission.
All right. Well, there's some, yes?
I'm going to echo one thing and then throw in another consideration.
Very good.
I suspect, in addition to Norm's recognition of the fact that half the traffic is going to be reduced anyway, you can't, it's right in and right out only, period. Not just inconvenient, you're not allowed to. So that's going to reduce the effect. The other one is, I suspect this is not the only situation in the city where parking in front of one building is sometimes even often used by customers of stores adjacent. I can think off the top of my head of 3 or 4 locations easily. Presumably, the business owners or property owners involved in those situations have found a way to work it out. My bigger concern is the point made by staff in their recommendation that this is compatible with the neighborhood and doesn't threaten improvements or potential development in the vicinity. I understand the residential use is non-conforming. It's likely to disappear. That doesn't worry me. I guess I am a little concerned, despite the efforts, the evidently very effective efforts that the property owner, the business owner, has used in the past and will apply here to control noise and odor. It certainly is going to limit one potential development in adjacent properties, and that's for any restaurant that would consider a patio space. Like it or not, that's going to be a consideration if somebody would want to redevelop any of those properties. That being said, the city does have ordinances about noise and odor. I think to prematurely prejudge what would happen, what the effect on a developer like a restaurant would be is unwarranted in this case, so I have no problem with it.
All right. Are we ready to vote? All right. The motion is to approve, and a vote yes is to approve. And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. If I might remind Nicole, the city will need a copy of that letter that you read in. Thank you. All right, commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if the meeting will continue, but I would respectfully ask to be excused. I need to pick up my son from a volleyball practice that ended 40 minutes ago, and he's staying at a friend. So given that it's only reports and others, if it continues, I'd like to be, since we have no other voting business on the matter, if it's okay if I'm excused.
I believe so.
Just for city council breakfast on Thursday.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I will not be able to attend. I'm hoping that if I can rearrange something, I'll let you know, Dennis, tomorrow. So, but okay.
All right. That brings us, well, where are we here? Reports. Staff is first.
I've got 4 things. First of all, we have, as you know, 3 appointments to the Planning Commission. First of those, Karina Elrod will be the regular member. Karina's here tonight, and I think most of you met her if you hadn't. And appreciate her sitting in. Matt Bagnell will be an alternate, and Tony Gallagher will be an alternate as well. And we've invited them to future meetings, and also we will try and meet with them one-on-one just to give them some background. And Doreen's will be putting together the same kind of detailed packet that you've gotten when you were new to the commission too.
Packet box.
Packet box.
Yeah, there's a lot of documents.
It's a lot of information. So.
And inviting them to the breakfast then as well?
At this point, no.
Okay.
We certainly could they're all certainly welcome to come to that, too, and I'll let them know that as well. So
I would think that would be perhaps helpful.
Which will lead into the next item, which is the breakfast. We have a breakfast with City Council. Planning Commission will have their annual breakfast with City Council this Thursday. Starts at 7:30. We have a few who aren't able to make it, but I think the majority of you will be there as well, so we appreciate that. Norm and Linda have been working on an agenda for that, and so I don't know if you want to talk about that during your report. That's probably the best time to talk about it. That'd be great. So, third thing is we're looking at a date for our annual work session, and typically we do that about a month after we have our new members on board. So that's typically the first or second weekend for Saturday in May. So it'd be either May 7th or May 14th is a Saturday, and we've called to see if we could get either of those dates at the museum in the boardroom. And so to some degree that date may depend on that availability of that room. Anybody have any conflicts that you're aware of for those dates? So,
What were those dates again?
The 7th and the 14th are both Saturdays. So if not, if you just let me know, and we'll try and work around that as well. And then the fourth thing is that Linda and Steve put together some draft language that Sarah Jane and I have been working with, and we will be putting together revisions and getting those back out to everybody with Linda and Steve's permission in terms of sharing that language with you. So really appreciate all the work they put into that. So, always.
And that is just looking at the goals and policies and kind of cleaning up the languages just of the goals and policies. We didn't address the framework or, the vision or any other components of the comp plan.
And you got to the implementation strategies as well. So.
And we did add a couple of policies too.
Yeah.
That we're going to want to run by everybody, and just a couple things that we thought of that, believe it or not, something that we haven't thought of as a commission yet.
But I think we'll note which those are.
Right, need attribution. Yep.
And that's it.
When should we expect that, Dennis?
Sarah Jane and I are getting together this Wednesday and Friday, and we will try and get that out to you middle of next week is the intent, so that you have in a week in advance, because we will be meeting on, let's see, our first meeting in April or March. We're meeting at the last Monday of this month, which is the 28th. Is that right? The 28th of March. So yeah. So the intent is to get it out to you like the 23rd. So.
And will that provide us enough time to respond and react and discuss the issues we need to without having a separate meeting?
It's a good question. The thought was we would have that discussion at the meeting on the 28th, but yeah, we could certainly do more.
I don't suppose we'd have access to that electronically. I'm going to be out of town the whole week.
Oh, sure, absolutely. We can send it to you electronically as well. Yeah, actually, and I know a lot of you prefer that just for editing, so and making comments. So we will do that as well. So it'll be hard copy as well as electronic.
Did you have a proposal for another meeting or something, another discussion time?
I was thinking.
I don't know. I think you're right. We will need more time to discuss, but I don't think we have it. So I'm interested if you have some idea.
I don't know if we could keep the 28th, but then maybe we want to change our time frame of, publishing it online until we can make the revisions that we need and discuss the issues adequately. I think the goal of the 28th is to use the expertise of Julio and Pablo's and Norm in the session.
Or at least a history, if not
expertise.
Yeah. Or at the very least, we could see how it goes on the 28th and make that decision at the end of the meeting. Are we close enough to say, yeah, we can issue it, or do we need another session?
Very good.
Does that work?
All right. So we'll discuss it the 28th and then try to assess. All right. Liaison, Historic Preservation Board.
There hasn't been a meeting that I've attended since the last time we've met.
Okay.
So the last time I think you were there, we discussed the guidelines. It was back a couple months ago.
Yeah, they rescheduled once because of President's Day, I think, and I know you said you couldn't make it. I couldn't either. All right, very good. Commissioners, any reports? I will just say, regarding, Linda has some things, I think she probably has too many things to cover at the breakfast, but if you have something you'd like brought up, there's been some discussion about the PDO process and some things. I think it would benefit the commissioners to see what the perhaps comments from the council going forward, and that's one reason why I thought particularly the new appointees, it would be helpful for them to be there, and understanding that this is a breakfast and on a working day, and it's difficult for people to make that.
And just to interject a little bit, apologies for interrupting, but City Council has scheduled a study session to talk about the PDO process and the flow charts for the different processes. Jan, that is the next Tuesday. That's right. Thank you.
So if there's anything else, David, you'll be traveling. If there's anything that you would like me to bring up, I will, I guess, note things for council.
Well, I'll be here this week for the breakfast.
Oh, okay, very good.
Matter of fact, there are a couple things I wanted to suggest, and that was one of them. Of course, City Council's had that on there. We need to have a supplemental discussion on this, on their agenda for the last 3 years.
Right.
Actually, going back beyond that, along with the TIS and the processes. Matter of fact, I spent some time this weekend. Obviously, I need to get a life. Rereading the workshop reports from 2005 forward, especially as how they dealt with the comp plan update and related issues. That's why I know the PDO keeps coming up and coming up. The other thing was, and I was going to ask tonight about it, they had talked about reviewing the application and approval processes, how they've been working out, what the flow chart even, I think literally was mentioned last year's. So yeah, I wanted to mention that. I'm also going to suggest, I haven't seen the agenda you've worked out for our discussion. I think we need to prepare ourselves for answering some fairly pointed questions and maybe responding to some fairly surprising intentions from City Council as far as where we go from here. So just think about that. Then lastly, in the process of rereading the workshop reports, I noticed that I was quoted at last year's as responding to a question from Jim Taylor about the Livable Communities Initiative, saying that, oh yeah, we're going to be working on that. I have to say I don't remember saying that. So I did a little quick research and spent a lot of time online. Everybody and his brother has a Livable Communities Initiative. The version that was initiated in 2009 in the U.S. Senate by Christopher Dodd, co-sponsored by our Colorado's own Ed Perlmutter, last I heard is still in committee, has not been put forward. There are two things that since Jim Taylor allegedly did ask me about this last year, I think I'm going to have to take a couple of minutes to at least tell him what we've done since I had said that we were doing something about it. I don't know that we've explicitly done anything. However, in reading through that legislation, I find that other than the fact that largely it is a grant program to dangle free federal dollars in order to get induce cities to impose certain guidelines for community development. One of the other things is take any term or concept that we have addressed in the last 12 months with the comp plan update, not the previous 2 years, but the last 12 months. It's in there, specifically, by definition. And I'll tell you right now, I think each of you should go and look at it. And mainly because I'm telling you right now, I'm a little uncomfortable with some of the direction, some of the definition it gives. And I think if it's going to come up, and since it came up a year ago, it's likely to come up, we need to be familiar with it and be prepared for it.
Well, and one of my suggestions for Thursday's meetings is to provide a summary of the recommendations, and that would mention to the city council, these are the issues that we dealt with, and this is how we're recommending in the comp plan to deal with it. And that would just kind of give them an overview of the policy decisions that they, that this comp plan may be making.
And I concur with that. You know I do because we've talked about it. But that's really separate from this issue that Jim Taylor had brought up. As I say, any sustainability, workforce housing, affordable housing, complete streets, all that is very explicitly defined in this proposed legislation. And somehow or other, it just sort of seeped into what our draft now says. Not by any explicit plan on our part, it just sort of got in there. So I heartily recommend that you go online. I'll send you the reference. I thought I had it with me tonight, and I don't. It's not that tough, because really the effective parts you want to look at are the definitions. You don't need to worry about the grant terms and conditions and all that sort of thing, especially given the current attitude of the Senate. We're probably not going to see any of those grant programs go through.
All right. Some of the elements, I guess, I thought I would bring up to council. I guess one basic thing is our next area of the comprehensive plan, and I use that vaguely, being one of the ones that is going to depart the Santa Fe corridor, or would they prefer the commission to do something with a lighting plan? We've discussed that. Accessory dwelling units. I've made notes about the TIZ and what you said about answer and respond to direction, which is kind of those items. So we'll ask them and probably generate some discussion about some of those things. These are sort of outside the realm of the comprehensive plan, things that would immediately be applicable citywide, particularly accessory dwelling units. That's something that Jim Taylor has mentioned before, and might be a good thing, a good sidebar for a few months for the commissioners. All right. If there's nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded, and hearing no discussion or dissent, we are adjourned. Thank you.